Hey now, good Thursday afternoon. Welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. 3 to 6 today. Plenty to get to. Draft, college hoops. Not a whole lot of baseball today. The Royals don't play. Woo! Yeah!
And that's
Royals,
sad.
yeah.
Not sad. They didn't lose today.
Did not lose today.
No Royals
and they will
lost
not lose today.
in the book today.
How about that?
That's a good thing.
That's awesome. That's about the best Royals news we can give you for today. We are going to have plenty of fun on the show today. We've got a bunch of NFL draft to get to. That includes leading off the show here in just a minute, the latest on the Chiefs draft intel. Some very interesting stuff from Daniel Jeremiah earlier today. We'll get to that. Plus, Nate Taylor from The Athletic posted his big board, and he broke it down over at theathletic.com by pick. So, here's 5 guys at pick 31 the Chiefs are going to be interested in. 5 guys at 63, so on and so forth. Some interesting names. Who do we like from those groups? Who do we maybe not like from those groups? We'll get to that coming up later on this hour. Rick Peterson is going to stop by today for our Invista Credit Union High School whip around. We'll get the latest on everything going on around the world of spring sports in the capital city. We'll get a note on Washburn baseball and softball as well. Plus, this hour, we've got some either or over under coming your way. Later on in the show, as I mentioned, more draft to get to. Interesting question Dan gave me earlier today. Any guys we project as maybe Hall of Fame caliber in this class, or guys we could see hitting that ceiling? We'll discuss that coming up later on in the show. Jake is going to swing by for a round of crosstalk at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. What is wrong with you? And do you remember Billy Preston? One of the most mythological KU basketball players of all time.
That's the perfect way to say it. Never appeared in a game that counted.
No, not once. Man, he gave Fort Hays State buckets, though, in the preseason exhibition.
I'm sure there's a Pitt State player, too, that still sees Billy Preston giving them that work in their nightmares.
Yamming on them at Allen Fieldhouse. Well, he is, amazingly, back in the news a little bit. He was a featured part of the newest ESPN 30 for 30 podcast. And Dan got to listen to the start of the show. It's a series, right?
Yes, it's a 4-part series.
4 parts.
First part is the shortest, about 35 minutes. The others weigh in between 45 and 50 minutes. So you figure you add that all up, it's about 3 hours of listening time, give or take, probably a little less. I listened to the first 2 parts of the 4-part series. It's called The Bag Game. And
it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's worth listening to. I so far have been entertained and heard, gotten to hear Billy Preston's side of the story, essentially, which we never really got to hear in all of this. And I think that he and his mother are absolutely correct that they were victims in this process, but not victimized by the people that they think victimized them.
Interesting. We'll get Dan's perspective on this coming up in a little bit. Very excited to talk about this later on in the show. We'll get to all that and so much more. Don't forget, as always, if you would like to be a part of the program, hit us up on the text line at 785-272-9429. And of course, you can also jump into the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our YouTube channel. Go subscribe if you haven't already. As always, we would definitely love for you to check out all of our video content, our live streams every day, the back catalog of all of our live streams. They're all in a playlist for you right on the main page of our channel. We've got a playlist that's right there in order, every single one of our live shows. Best way, easiest way to just go back and watch anything you may have missed or want to go revisit. We've got the YouTube Shorts game going. Have a new one out about Nick Timberlake today. Lots of good stuff over on our YouTube channel. Again, it's called Sports on 580 WIBW. I said Jack there. I went to high school with a kid named Jack Timberlake, and that's why I keep calling Nick Jack, and it is throwing me off completely. I might have to just go with Nicholas so I get a longer name.
Was Jack Timberlake much of a basketball player?
No, he was actually really obnoxious and a bad athlete, but played every sport, and he just wasn't really good at any of them.
Hey, shout out to those kids with the 3 letters and 0 actual game.
In fact, he transferred maybe before our junior year to one of the schools in the city that was like a real athletic powerhouse. And as far as I'm aware, by 1 year later, he was not participating in any sports.
Got a wake-up call.
At some point, maybe your parents should realize you're not cut out for that game. Anyway, that's a story for another day. All of that content can be found over at our Sports on 580 WIBW YouTube channel. The Kansas City Chiefs in 1 week, all right, we're looking here at probably in the neighborhood of 1 week and 7 hours at this point, around 10 o'clock, they'll probably make their pick.
Until they pick. Yeah, that's probably about right.
Roughly 1 week and about 7 hours, maybe a little bit more. The Kansas City Chiefs are scheduled to make their first pick in the NFL draft this year. And I had a thought today, and we sort of, not that we ignored it, but we just didn't really mention it a whole lot earlier in the week. The Chiefs have such a wild advantage that they've given themselves that's, I guess, kind of a loophole in the NFL rules. No one says they can't do this. They get the best possible way to work out wide receivers and or tight ends, just pass catchers in general, because the Chiefs phase one of their offseason, as we know, began on Monday, and they've been doing media availability. You heard from Brett Veach during Mic'd Up today. Patrick Mahomes isn't there. He's not on site for most of the phase one stuff in Kansas City because he's at home in Texas. This is the second year in a row the Chiefs have allowed him to, and it's just kind of part of the offseason, he and wide receivers are allowed to be where he lives in Texas or just away from the facility in general. They've been working out with draft prospects. They had a workout with Quentin Johnson at TCU's facility the other day. There were videos all over the place online, but that's Patrick Mahomes throwing to Quentin Johnson, a possible first-round pick. They had a workout with Zay Flowers the other day, who a lot of people, Seth Keiser, friend of the program, I know that's his favorite wide receiver in the draft. We talked about him earlier in the week with Matt Verderame as well. And I believe last week with Matt Derrick, too. They worked out with him. So the fact that the Chiefs are doing something no one else is doing and just saying, yeah, our quarterback doesn't have to come. Like that, don't even bother coming in. Go work out with your current receivers and go work out with draft prospects and let us know what you think. Is that like the number one biggest advantage in scouting the Chiefs have over every other team? And does it make you, and that's a semi-joking question, but also kind of serious, and also, does that make you feel any more comfortable about the Chiefs ending up with one of those guys or possibly someone else they're working out with come next Thursday?
I think it shows how serious the Chiefs are about adding a pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is more than just our idle speculation at this point. If they are having top 30 visits with guys and they are sending guys to work out with Patrick Mahomes, we don't know. And there's no reason to believe that Mahomes is particularly hands-on when it comes to building the roster. But I have to think that if the Chiefs have identified wide receiver as a need in this draft, and you and I have both agreed that they should feel like it's a need in this draft, then what better way to get inside information, all the information you could possibly need about a wide receiver from the guy who's going to be, in an ideal world, throwing them the football for the next 4 to 5 years at least. That to me just seems like a smart way to go about things. Mm-hmm. And I would certainly put more stock in a receiver being a Chiefs target if that player has gone to work with Patrick Mahomes. So like Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers, I think are now much more interesting names to keep an eye on at number 31 because they've had that opportunity to go and catch passes from 15. And hey, maybe Mahomes has reported back to Veach and said, I don't know about these guys, man.
Yeah, this dude sucks.
Yeah, these guys didn't make a very good first impression on me. I don't know about these guys. But the Chiefs feel a certain type of way about them and have routed them in their quarterback's direction, the franchise's direction. That's more than a little smoke, I think, around those guys being a possibility at the 31st overall pick.
I think that is such an incredible, it's an incredibly smart thing for the Chiefs to do. If the league's not telling you you have to have every single person in the building, et cetera, well, then don't take advantage of that. If you're able to get all these extra workouts and time with these prospects and you get to see how do they work with Mahomes? Do they have an instant kind of chemistry? Does Mahomes notice a problem in them? Dang, they weren't able to separate from the DBs we were working with. Quentin Johnston's hands are just as bad as we thought they were, like whatever it ends up being. That's a huge advantage for Kansas City. And you're right. Maybe they say we've got major worries about Johnston's hands. We can't make that happen. On the other hand, might say, hey, I saw him make a catch, put his foot in the ground, turn it upfield with a lot of fluidity. I can understand why he got a bunch of yak at TCU. This is actually a great pick for us. I think it's just another element of scouting that is a benefit for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm excited to see if they end up with one of these guys that they've been working out with. A note that you brought up, too, from Daniel Jeremiah. He did a conference call earlier today, and he was asked about the Chiefs. And the question reads, you talked a little about the Chiefs earlier. I was curious what you thought about this year. They've got the 31st pick. Do you think they should try and find an impact guy there, or go with the strategy that worked before and find guys in later rounds too? For what it's worth, I don't think that's a very good question, because what team is not trying to find good players late in the draft too? What team is saying, nah, done with the first round, we're done finding good players? What kind of question is that?
I can think of one person who literally said it's hard to find an impact player where we pick first. George Payton, general manager of the Denver Broncos.
Good stuff.
They pick in the third round. And he literally said it's hard to find impact players in the third round. Well, not if you're good at your job, George.
They are so lucky the Raiders are pathetic. They're so lucky that the Raiders are pathetic, because that's dumb. The greatest quarterback of all time was a sixth rounder who no one wanted, who even the Patriots passed on 6 times before they took him. Like, come on. You can find good players everywhere.
Well, the quarterback and the coach have already been fall guys. So George Payton's next. He better find some impact players in this draft. Third round, sixth round, whenever. They better find some impact.
What a ridiculously stupid thing to say. I missed that quote.
I gotta find it.
What a very dumb quote. Why would you? Your quarterback was a third round pick. Russell Wilson, not by the Broncos, but Russell Wilson famously was a third round pick.
Yeah, George Payton said, this is, I've got multiple confirmation of this quote here. Sayer Bettinger, who works for the website Predominantly Orange and co-hosts the Locked On Broncos podcast, quotes George Payton as saying, very hard to get impact player third round, but we'll have an idea where he fits with our team.
That's awful. That is such a dumb quote. Again, very lucky that the Raiders are truly embarrassing, because otherwise, oh boy, the Broncos would be in that same category. Anyway, beyond that dumb question, here is what Daniel Jeremiah had to say. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if they traded back again. That wouldn't shock me. They're picking 31, 63, 95 right now. I also think that playmakers is a way they could end up going. I know they've been doing a ton of work on wideouts. I know they've looked at the top end guys and some of those third round type players. So I would be very surprised if one of those 3 picks is not a receiver, just based off the work they're doing, adding another guy to that mix. I think you also probably look at grabbing a tackle at some point in time with one of these picks. With that in mind, I would not be shocked at all the way you describe what they did last year, having more shots at it. To me, trading back from 31, that would make sense to me. If they did stick, I think you look at wide receivers. I think you look at Quentin Johnston and at Zay Flowers, if he was potentially still in the mix. What do you know? Those are the 2 guys we just talked about who worked out with Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Daniel Jeremiah is great, by the way. I think he's the best TV talking head when it comes to draft stuff. I think he does a really good job, and I think he's very informed when he puts this stuff out there. And this is pretty much the angle we've been taking, right? Like, it looks like they're obviously taking a receiver or some kind of pass catcher, and they got to go get a right tackle. Edge, you figure, is going to be somewhere in there, but edge has a lot of depth this year. This is a good defensive draft.
Yeah.
A lot of edge talent, tons of corner talent, too.
And you can tell that by how many different names that you see. If you're going through the mock drafts and you look at teams projected to pick an edge late in the first round, how many different names you see come up. Some drafts you see Derek Hall, other drafts you see him till the second round. Some drafts you see Will McDonald, some drafts you see Felix Anudike-Uzomah, some drafts you see BJ Ojulari from LSU. Like, all of these guys can't go in the first round. There are other teams that are going to draft from other positions of need. So the second round is going to be, that might be the spot. I've talked about the Chiefs moving up, and I think they're going to at some point make a move, make a jump up in the draft, spend some of their draft capital in the 4th and 5th rounds where they maybe don't have all the roster spots they need for guys like who would be taken in those rounds, and jump up in the second round. That might be, second round might be where they go get the pass rusher, if that's what they want to do. If they sit back, lay in the cut, get a wide receiver at 31, and then jump up for a pass rusher in the 50s, that, of course, sets aside, like, did they prioritize a tackle higher than that? Maybe they draft a tackle, move up for a wide receiver in round 2, because wide receiver is another one of those positions where you see a lot of guys who look like solid day 2 options to draft. But edge, to me, is it's the one position they bring up that I could see them being aggressive with.
I would be too. I mean, I can understand them being that. I still feel like it's more likely they move up from 31 than they move down from 31. Now, I would not hate it, and that is the the GM speak when you hear, well, we're going to let the board, we'll let the board play out. We're going to follow our board. You always hear that around this time of year. And while it just sounds like annoying nonsense and gibberish, there is an element of truth to it when you're picking last in the round, is that, well, you might have a great, a first round grade on 20 players, for example. I think this year I've heard like 17 to 20 generally. And you might say, well, shoot, the 20 guys on our board for first rounders, they're all gone by pick number 20. They were the first 20 players drafted or whatever. So we're fine moving back. We'll move back to 45. That'd be Green Bay. That'd be weird, but we'll move back to 45 and we'll take Felix Anudike-Uzomah there. We'll take, Josh Downs at the end of the second round. Boom. We've got our wide receivers or Jalen Hyatt or whoever. Boom. We're set. We got 2 positions of need. We'll get our tackle later. Or alternately, if there is a slide, if there have been rumors, for example, today, and I don't know where these came from, but I saw them on Twitter. There's some rumors that maybe there are some off-the-field issues with Darnell Wright from Tennessee. Often that's actually just code for a team at like 25 wants him and wants him to fall there, so they leak this kind of stuff.
He did jump in somebody's DMs and say some not very nice things to them.
No, they were not nice at all.
That Bengals draft expert. He then apologized publicly to him, but there was that.
Yeah, it may be a little feisty. So let's say there is something like that, and a guy who's in that top 17 to 20 falls to number 25. I think the Chiefs trade up there. That's the nice thing about having 12 picks this year, is you can move them in any which way you want. You can be aggressive if you want. You can move back if you want. We had Matt in the YouTube comments earlier ask, how many times are the Chiefs going to move up for a pick during the draft? I mean, I would not be surprised if the Chiefs made 2 or 3 trades, up or down. I think you can see as many as that. I could see a move up or down from the first. I would not be shocked at all if they moved up in the second, maybe even the third round as well. I could see some late draft wheeling and dealing too. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them trade out of the 7th round or something. Say, all right, we got 2 of these. We're going to dump one off because San Francisco really wants one, and we'll get their 7th next year and deal for future picks. I think every single scenario is on the table for the Chiefs here. But again, as long as they fill those 3 big needs at the very beginning. And I think everyone seems to believe that, and while media and fans and the blog boys and all that are not always super accurate, generally, if everyone in the whole world knows what you need to target early on, the team is going to do something very similar. I wanted to get to this from Nate Taylor at The Athletic. I mentioned it earlier. Targets for the first round for the Chiefs, or just targets in general for all of their picks. We'll look mostly at the earlier rounds here. And he's got his board of players he thinks the Chiefs could be trading up for in the first round. So they want to move from 31 into the early 20s or the mid 20s, hell, even the late 20s. They just know they want to jump in front of Philly or someone to go get a pick. He lists players including Darnell Wright, the right tackle from Tennessee, who we've brought up plenty of times and I think would be a great fit. Zay Flowers from Boston College. There's that name again. That seems significant. And then Mazi Smith from Michigan. Although, if I'm not mistaken, you said you weren't super sold on that to the Chiefs.
I'm not. I just don't see defensive tackle being something that they're going to prioritize at that point in the draft. I like Mazi Smith, the player, but I don't love that fit. I think the Chiefs are in good shape at defensive tackle.
I think so too. The only way I could see it, and this might also just be me reading too much into things, but if you do believe that Chris Jones isn't getting another contract, if you think he's going to play out the final year of this deal and that's going to be it, and you draft Mazi Smith, maybe that leads you to believe they think he is your next piece that is going to start there and be your stud interior defensive lineman. I don't expect that to happen. I think that'd be crazy, but I think you would have to have that sort of line of thinking for that to make a ton of sense. I'm fine with Flowers and I'm fine with Darnell Wright for sure. The picks that Nate mentions, or the potential options, should they stay at pick number 31. 2 edge rushers, Keon White from Georgia Tech. We brought him up the other day. BJ Ojulari from LSU, who's generally been considered an early second-round guy. And then Quentin Johnston, again, guy who keeps coming up from TCU. I mean, people were talking about Johnston early in the draft process as a top 15 pick. And now it's, he might be a first-rounder. It's crazy how fickle this the media side of this is. Anything yay or nay about that trio?
So we talked about Keon White a little bit earlier this week because he was Dane Brugler's first round pick to the Chiefs in his 7-round mock draft. And I don't know. I don't great athlete,
Mhm.
fairly new to the position. I think there are some lower floor guys who are close enough to White's athletic ceiling that are a little more appealing to me, would be a little bit more appealing to me at number 31,
Mhm.
BJ Ojulari being one of them. As far as Quentin Johnston goes, all I know is I watched a quarterback that I didn't think was all that great for most of his career
Mhm.
turn into the what award he won the Davy O'Brien, didn't he? Max Duggan?
Yeah, he won the Davey O'Brien.
He turned to a Davy O'Brien award winner because most of his game was I'm gonna throw it up there to Quentin Johnston and he's gonna go get it.
And it worked.
Yeah. So I would certainly be intrigued by the possibility of going from Max Duggan turning into a star doing that for Quentin Johnston to Patrick Mahomes getting to do that to Quentin Johnston. That sounds fun to me. I could get behind that.
Yeah, I would be 100% in favor. Either of those wide receivers, I think I'd be incredibly intrigued by. I think you can probably get one of either White or Ojulari early in the second round. That would be a guy I would be targeting if I was moving back, honestly. Like if I was going to get one of the first 10 picks of the second round, one of those, Houston wants to move up or something. I think you could get either one of those two guys probably early in the second round. So if they were going to move back, I think Ojulari would make a lot of sense. I really like his game coming out of LSU. Second round, a bigger list of guys. He's got 5 guys as potential late second round targets for the Chiefs. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, Anton Harrison, Tyler Scott, the wide receiver from Cincinnati we talked about earlier this week, DeWanda Jones, the behemoth offensive tackle from Ohio State.
Does it feel like he's really slid?
Yeah, it does. It really, really does. I think based on what I have read, there are a lot of worries about, again, speed with him.
Yeah, like is he too big?
Too big, yeah, exactly. And then Darnell Washington from Georgia. The interesting thing here about Nate's list is I like all of these players to some degree. Now, I think Jones is the biggest project of any of them, and Darnell Washington a bit of a project too. I like all these picks. I would not be surprised if Tyler Scott's the only one that gets out of like the top 55. Like I think Felix is going well before that. I think Anton Harrison's going to go before that. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington and Jones both go earlier than that too.
Yeah, I don't know. Any of those guys are going to be around at 63. The people who like Tyler Scott, we talked about Tyler Scott earlier this week because he was Dane Brugler's second round pick for the Chiefs at number 63. But the people who like Tyler Scott really like him. Either he's going to be there or he's going to be a day 3 pick. Like I feel like either he's going to go, either he's got a lot of helium and is going to find a team that loves him and takes him maybe top 60, or he's going to hang around on that draft board for a while. There's a lot of difference in opinion, it feels like, with Tyler Scott.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I'm a little surprised by that. Nate's more tied in than I am. Maybe he knows that some of these guys are going to slip a little bit. So those are some of the names to keep an eye on, at least for those first couple of picks for the Kansas City Chiefs. As always, we would love for you to jump in. Let us know any of your favorite prospects for the Chiefs. Barbara says, I would love to see Felix in a Chiefs uniform in the YouTube chat. Yeah, I certainly would too. I think that's an absolutely perfect fit. And he's a guy I would trade up for in round 2. Or if they move back in round 1, I would take Felix Anudike-Uzomah in a heartbeat. We've got to get to a timeout. Rick Peterson's going to join us later on this hour. And also coming up in just a moment, we've got some either or over under on 580 Sports Talk. Either or over under time on 580 Sports Talk before we get to Rick Peterson and the Invista Credit Union High School whip around here in just a few minutes. This one comes from a brief conversation I had with Jake as he was leaving the studio and I was walking in between Mic'd Up and 580 Sports Talk today. Over under 5.5. Chris Jones's ranking among the best defensive players in the NFL. So over.
Is he a top 5 defensive player in the league?
Effectively.
I think he is. I'd put him in my top 5.
You know, I heard Jake say that, and I thought, oh, man, he's really dang good. And among interior defensive tackles, he's either 1 or 2. Top 5? And then I looked at the voting for the Defensive Player of the Year award this past year. Nick Bosa won it. Totally fair. He had a great year. He's in the conversation, too. Micah Parsons, really good player, obviously. Chris Jones finished 3rd in the voting. He should have been 2nd, by the way. All the guys below him, Hassan Reddick, I would take Chris Jones. Myles Garrett, really good player. Jones is more unique. I would take Chris Jones. Max Crosby, great player. I would take Jones. Better than Quinnen Williams. Sauce Gardner's a rookie, and I would take Jones too. Matthew Judon had an awesome year. I would take Chris Jones. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think, is the only secondary player I'd probably put in the conversation right now because I think he's the best safety in the NFL.
Where did all the great safeties go?
They were moved to the slot.
Interesting.
I think they became slot corners.
Interesting.
Because especially if you were one like a fast safety.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ed Reed today would probably play safety, but some of those got because he was just such a, the field general, so to speak. But I think a lot of guys who were smaller and played safety in the previous, 20 years of NFL football, I think they've moved to the slot.
In certain systems, like it's hard to imagine like Earl Thomas playing in the slot, but maybe that's where a team might have seen his best fit.
Yeah.
Because he was really good in coverage. He was also, he was a 1-on-1 kind of player.
Right. Yeah. No, I genuinely think that is what happened because teams went to so many more 3 wide receiver, 4 wide receiver sets. You needed guys who could guard the Edelmans and the Welkers and the Cobbs and the players like that in the slot. I think that's what happened to him.
That is interesting because you used to be able to just rattle off like,
it was a star position.
Yeah, like stars played safety. And now, gosh, I give you Minkah. Quandre Diggs has been really good for a long time for Seattle. And then, it's not like Justin Simmons is a really good player, but outside of the AFC West, do people know Justin Simmons like that?
Yeah, he's hardly a household name. Like, honest to God, if Tyrann Mathieu had come out in the draft in, what was he drafted, 2012?
Yeah.
If he had been drafted in 2017, he's a corner.
Yeah.
He's a slot corner. He's not a safety.
Yeah. Like
he played 50-50 with the Chiefs.
Yeah. The Cardinals really intended to use him in that hybrid role for a while. And then, he just kind of started to be a full-time safety. Jamal Adams is another guy like that who is kind of positionless in a weird way, and also he had been on the field last year. I don't know what he is anymore, but
actually, that's an interesting point with Adams specifically because I know he's a better player than people. I don't think he's as good as what was given up for him in the trade. I also think he's better than people make him out to be now. And he's not just blitz boy, even though that's really fun to say. I think maybe I should correct it more so than safeties became slot corners. Safety has just kind of become like this positionless position because bigger safeties have become hybrid linebackers.
Right.
Smaller, quicker safeties have become slot guys. So you have so few true safeties. Like Kyle Hamilton, who came out last year, drafted by Baltimore.
Yeah.
Like he's a true safety. But there are so few of those guys now.
And more, you get away from that cover 3, right?
Right.
Where you have like the single high safety who plays center field. Earl Thomas is the best example of that. More and more you get away from that. And you have 2 safeties, so you don't have like the traditional look and body type at that position.
No, 100% agree.
You mix and match it a little bit. But back to your point, I would go over. I think Chris Jones is a top 5 defensive player in the league. And I'm not just saying that because I think if I didn't say it, he would maybe say something mean to me on Twitter.
He'd tweet you.
He'd
tweet at you.
He'd tweet about it. He called me a clown.
No, I'm going to go with over 2. I would say he's in the top 5. And that's an exclusive group. But yeah, I would say he's top 5.
So here's an either or for you that I thought about. We were talking last week about it being Coachella. Big music festival. So here's your either or. Your favorite musician or band. You can either see them at a major music festival with thousands of other people, but you're way back. You're way, way back in the crowd. You're not like in the pit or anything. You're way, way back. You're like half a mile back from the stage.
Okay.
Or you can see them play in a club setting, but they only play their B-sides. They don't play any of the hits.
So if it's one of my favorites, I would take the smaller setting with the B-sides, because I know them. Like, if we're talking, like, if I'm going to see Metallica in an intimate setting, I know all the
the B-sides,
untalked about tracks from And Justice for All. Like, I'm ready for that.
Sure. And a band like that, I mean, at this point, their catalog is so well known, they really don't have a lot of B-sides.
Right, that's a good point.
Like, is Battery a B-side?
Yeah, it might be. They didn't play that when I saw them, so it might be at this point. Or like if I went and saw Kendrick Lamar again, like I've seen him in stadiums twice, but if he was going to play like all of his first EP front to back, I would say, oh yeah, I would absolutely be front row for that in a smaller place. I liked festivals when I went. I mean, I had a good time, but I also don't like being shoved. Like, I don't like people bumping into me constantly. So I actually liked to stay farther back anyway. But yeah, I would take the more intimate setting, because if I'm willing to go see them, I'm probably deep in the catalog anyway.
So let's say it's just one of like the biggest stars in music, and you like the hits, but you don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of their entire catalog.
I would do festival.
You do the festival then.
That's kind of how I saw Outkast. I saw them in Chicago on their final tour, their final real tour anyway. And the first half of the concert was all the hits. It was, Hey Ya and Roses and Rosa Parks. I mean, it was all the big hits. The second half, they just played their favorites. Like, Big Boy was like, oh yeah, I loved this one.
Yeah,
we're gonna play it.
Here's a 14-minute version of Spodio di Dopalicious.
Yes. No, that's how they closed the show. And a bunch of people around me were like, the hell is this? Like, I came for the speaker box, the Love Below songs. I don't know what this is. For that, I was like, okay, I'm cool being back a little bit, can chill, still enjoy the music. So yeah, it's definitely dependent on the artist. What would you do?
I think I'm probably going, if I know the artist, I'm definitely going with the intimate setting. I saw, my favorite band is Queens of the Stone Age, and I saw them at the Sokol Auditorium in Omaha in 2011, and they were touring specifically. It was the anniversary of their very first album, which doesn't have any of the like radio hits that Queens of the Stone Age had. Their very first album, and I love their very first album. So that was basically, it's basically a one big B-side.
Yeah, but
they played it front to back, and I loved it. And then they came out and they did all the rest of their stuff. So it ended up, they did No One Knows and Little Sister and all those things. No, I would have gone even if I hadn't known that. I went to see album one,
right?
Because I like album one that much. So yeah, if you like the band that much, it is kind of a no-brainer.
For what it's worth, I think that's my second favorite Queens of the Stone Age album.
Yeah, it's number 2 for me too.
Yeah, behind Songs for the Deaf.
Behind Songs for the Deaf, which is my favorite album of all time.
Yeah, no argument for me. Let's get to a quick commercial break. Rick Peterson's up next on 580 Sports Talk. Every Thursday at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, Rick Peterson joins us on 580 Sports Talk for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round. You can find all of Pistol's phenomenal work covering our local preps teams over at topsports.news, and you can find him on Twitter as well at Peterson_Rick. What's going on, Pistol?
Just the usual.
Are you enjoying having a day that's not sweltering outside?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with sweltering. I would rather have sweltering than 40 degrees and wind. So I'll take sweltering any day. But it's not bad today.
No, it's really not too bad out there. Well, we've got plenty to get to, so let's jump right in. But I actually had kind of a broader question, Pistol, to lead things off. I was just reading through some of the scores and some of the stuff that's on the front couple pages of topsports.news right now. And there's some, competitive games, soccer, baseball, softball, etc. But I was wondering, given some of the scores of games we had recently, it popped into my head with the realignment of the leagues, a new Centennial League, a small Centennial League, the UKC really blowing up, obviously Highland Park in a new league as well. Do you feel like there is a better level of competition and just head-to-head competition now than we had in recent years? Do you feel like maybe it's worse, it's going in the other direction? Or do you feel like it's still pretty stable from what you've seen so far this spring and even really over the course of the whole year?
That would take some study, but just off the top of my head, from someone that sees, hundreds of events from, the fall to the end of spring, what I've noticed is there's a lot more routes, a lot more games that aren't close. Now, there's some very good ones. There's some very good games. But I would say, there was a time in the Centennial League particularly when it was all 7 city schools and 10 teams and all that, a route was pretty rare. I mean, you'd have a lot of really close games. I'm not sure we see as many close games as we used to. And let's be honest, particularly in basketball, and we've seen it a little bit in softball and baseball, we have 40, 50-point games in basketball. We have a lot of 3-inning, 5-inning games in softball and baseball. And I'm not sure we had as many of those until the league realignment.
And I'm with you on that, Pistol, because just anecdotally, I've noticed something very similar. And do you know why that might be? Do you have a hunch as to why we're having more of those blowouts?
I just don't think, there was always a time in the, like Centennial, like I use that as an example because we had it for so
sure.
long. But you might have a couple of the teams that were at the bottom, and they were always going to have trouble competing. But the other 7 or 8 in most sports were really pretty good, and in a lot of cases, really pretty close. I don't think we have the parity in throughout leagues that we used to. And then, like I said, that would be a great study to do. But just from somebody that's out quite a bit, that's my opinion.
We're chatting with Rick Peterson from topsports.news. It's the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around here on 580 Sports Talk. Make sure you're following Pistol on Twitter at Peterson_Rick and following his tremendous work covering prep sports and Washburn sports for topsports.news. Well, let's get to some of the action going on, Pistol, this week around the prep scene in the city. And I actually wanted to start with baseball and softball, our bat and ball sports today. On the baseball field, I know Shawnee Heights had a big win earlier on, one of those blowout wins earlier this week. They took down Leavenworth. How about 12-3 in that one? Pretty much business as usual, it feels like, Pistol, for the top teams in the city, Shawnee Heights included.
Yeah, Seaman split the other day with Lansing. That surprised in baseball. That surprised me a little bit. But yeah, they're still. I think Seaman was still like 10-2. Shawnee Heights has been a little up and down, and they lost a lot off last year's team. But they seem to be coming around, and I think they're going to be very good in the UKC. I tell you, the team that maybe I don't know if they've surprised me, but they're really playing well. And I saw them the other day. Is Hayden? Hayden baseball is really playing well and was just hitting the heck out of the ball the other day when I saw him.
Has that been something that you expected earlier in the year, Pistol? When you're putting together your previews for it, did it feel like, hey, Hayden's a team to watch, or has that really been a surprise?
Uh, a little bit of a surprise, and I don't know why it should be, because Bill Arnold's teams at Hayden, whether it's football or baseball, are usually very competitive. I just knew they were pretty young, and sometimes it takes youth a while to come around. But they, the weird one is they opened the season with a rout against Silver Lake, and then till at least a couple of days ago, that had been Silver Lake's only losses. So I think Hayden might have been better than I thought right off the bat. And even though they got beat bad that day, I think Silver Lake is better. But Hayden is always going to come around. The thing about Hayden is, I don't think no matter who they have back, what newcomers they have, that with their tradition in every sport, they always expect to win. And I'm not sure you can overlook that. I mean, I think what do they always say? Tradition doesn't graduate.
That's right.
Well, I think that's kind of the case with Hayden in most sports.
Flipping over to the softball side of things, Pistol, you mentioned Silver Lake baseball a moment ago. Let's take a look at Silver Lake softball from outside the city, but still here in Shawnee County. 10-0 after a sweep over Riley County earlier this week. That team just continues to play better and better.
Yeah, and the doubleheader and I had, I believe, Isaac or Todd over there, so we covered it, but I wasn't able to see it. But the one that really I think was statement wins for them was when Silver Lake took a doubleheader from their rivals, Rossville. Rossville was a state team last year, got fourth in a couple of real tough losses, and they're still good. That's their only losses. So that's the one that really proved to me that Silver Lake is and Silver Lake's got something that not every team has. They got pitching depth. And if you have pitching depth, you can go a long way.
No, there's no doubt about that. And speaking to that point and sticking with softball, I wanted to move over to the UKC and Shawnee Heights. How about a pair of 15-0 shutout wins over Leavenworth? And again, there's that theme of blowouts again with these newly realigned leagues. But I don't care who you're playing. You win 2 games in shutout fashion, and you win 2 games 15-0. That's pretty darn impressive, even for a team that is, well, frankly, always impressive in Shawnee Heights.
Yeah, and Shawnee Heights was coming off, let's see, 3 or 4 losses in a row to really, really, really good teams. And so they were looking for something like that. So that was good for them to bounce back like they did. A lot of their kids are young, and including Grace Proctor, who had a really big day that day. So they're going to be good. Highs trying to fight back a little bit, but they really lost. They lost the state's best player, according to Gatorade,
right?
In Knights Kennedy. So I saw Topeka's always kind of a softball town, and I think it's going to be that way by the time we get to May again.
Just a couple more questions for Rick Peterson from TopSports.news here on the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around on 580 Sports Talk. All right, Pistol, time for our weekly look at your TopSports.news Shawnee County track and field on a roll for both the boys and the girls as we get deeper and deeper into the track season. How much local representation do you know that we had at the Kansas Relays this past week?
Well, we had some athletes that did very well. You're not on a year in and year out basis. Those kids, and this is the first time they've had it in 3 years.
Yeah.
So, but even traditionally, Topeka kids go up there and usually get a bunch of PRs. They don't always win because it's a multi-state event, and a lot of times it just shows them how good the states around us are and what they need to shoot for going forward. But probably the best mark that I remember, 2 of them. One, Natalie Hillibert of Hayden broke a school record in the 400-meter dash that had been set in 1986.
Wow.
That was huge. And then the triple jumper, Alicia Batson of Topeka West. He just keeps getting farther and farther. He's up pushing 47 feet right now, and only a sophomore. So those two really stuck out to me from the relays.
And one other thing I wanted to get to here, Pistol, I was going to ask you for some of the standout track performers that you've seen recently since we last got to speak. And I was looking at the boys track honor roll for this week. One of my favorite athletes in the city, we were talking about Hayden earlier, Finn Dunshee from Hayden. We talked about his story during the football season several months ago. How about the top 100 meter time this week at under 11 seconds? I swear, with his background, his football prowess, and his track prowess too, I think he might be one of my favorite athletes in the city.
And, and I'll throw another one in. Jensen Strickle.
Yeah.
A state champion last year in the long jump as a freshman. He's up there. I think he may be leading the 400. He's up there anyway. And the thing I like about both those kids, you mentioned it, they're great football players, but then they just go right to other sports. That's what I love about a lot of the kids in the city, and particularly Hayden. A lot of multi-sport athletes that do well in every sport they're in.
You mentioned the youth, Pistol, when we were talking about Hayden baseball earlier. They've got a lot of youth for track, for baseball, for their football team this past year. Some young up-and-coming guys with the basketball team as well. I would predict right now, there's my Preps bold prediction for the future, Pistol. Hayden's going to be in for a couple of pretty good years here in the near future with how much young talent they've got. We've got to get out of here for this 3 o'clock hour. Rick Peterson from TopSports.news joins us every Thursday for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. Follow him on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. And of course, head on over to TopSports.news for all the best local coverage of prep athletes, teams, and more. Pistol, we appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the weather, and we'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it.
That's Rick Peterson from TopSports.news. Yeah, Finn Dunshee with the rugby background.
Yeah, I remember him.
Football, and now is a standout track runner as well. That is absolutely awesome.
Speed kills.
It absolutely does. We've got Crosstalk with Jake Lebahn to lead off next hour on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk getting started on this Thursday afternoon, April 20th. Happy 420 if you're celebrating it out there. Not that you can legally do that here, but when has that ever stopped anyone?
Especially when you can go a state to the east or a state to the west.
Yeah, Casey Mo's not that far away. If you're listening to us in the west, Colorado might not be that far away.
We're not endorsing that behavior. We're just saying that that behavior is within the realm of your possibilities.
I have never done that, and
that's not how I don't get down like that either. To be completely honest with you,
don't roll that way.
That's not my get down at all.
Hey, that's
But if it is yours, blaze one for
us. There are ways to do that on this holiest holiday of blazing it. Coming up in this 4 o'clock hour, Jake's going to join us here in just a second for some crosstalk. We'll also get to today's What is Wrong with You, brought to you by Top City Metal Supply here in the capital city. And Dan had an NFL draft question about the best prospects or best long-term prospects anyway in this year's NFL draft. We'll touch on that at the bottom of the hour. Don't forget to hop into the comment section on YouTube with your thoughts. Our channel's called Sports on 580 WIBW. And you can jump into the text line as well. That number, as always, 785-272-9429. So without further ado, we welcome in one of the co-hosts of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. That is Jake Lebahn. You can hear him from noon to 3 every weekday here on 580 WIBW, along with America's #1 Royals diehard, Fulton Caster. What's going on?
Week from today.
Yep.
Week from today.
We are now down to about 1 week and 6-ish hours until the Chiefs make their first pick. Yay or nay? With the 31st pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Zay Flowers, wide receiver, Boston College.
Oh, yay.
Chiefs select Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, TCU.
Yay. I'm yay on both.
Do you have a preferred position for that first round? Or is it just, hey, they've got 3 major needs: pass catcher, edge, offensive tackle. Yeah. Go get one of them.
Yeah. I think they're in a great spot. I really
think so too.
You don't have a glaring need. Like last year, they had a glaring need. They actually had 2 glaring needs last year, which were corner, and edge.
Mm-hmm.
And to no big surprise, they drafted both of them. And if you want to go with, they had a 3rd glaring need because there was no Tyreek Hill. I was not part of that, but they went and they got Sky Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Like they addressed all 3 needs last year. This year, their needs: offensive line. I'll just say D-line. Either a tackle or an edge.
Interesting.
Anybody on the defensive line. And then, if they go edge, great. I don't think they're going to go D-line at 31. I guess that would be my surprise. But if they go O-line, edge, or wide receiver, I would not be surprised.
So let me ask you that, because we were talking about Massey Smith from Michigan earlier and saying, I don't really see that happening. Are you in the camp of, like, let me rephrase. When do you think would be the earliest you would be comfortable, Dan, taking an interior defensive lineman?
No earlier than the 3rd round for me.
Okay. I feel somewhat similar because I think there's enough talent at wide receiver, especially on day 2, in terms of offensive linemen, especially day 1 into early day 2, and then at edge, pretty much the entire draft, that you can assess all of your biggest needs before you get onto depth pieces. So there are a lot of good defensive linemen out here. We talked about it earlier. There's a really good defensive draft. Really, really good. Really, really deep. In fact, if the Chiefs still needed a corner, this would be the year for it because there's tons of them out there. Tons of them. But no, I think it's very realistic and very likely they address their 3 biggest needs in their first 3 picks. We also had a question: how many times do they trade up?
I'll just say once, because I think trading up more than once is difficult.
Even with 12 picks?
Well, they got 10, don't they?
12.
Oh, yeah, the 7th rounder.
I believe it is, unless I'm mistaken.
I thought they only had 10.
I got to look this up. I've been saying 12, and I'm going to feel really dumb if that's now wrong.
It is 10.
Yeah, I thought it was 10.
Oh, okay. Well, either way. Still. I think
I was under that impression they had 12 too for a while. Yeah, I don't know.
Why that was my assumption.
Where that number came from. Maybe there might have been a compensatory pick or 2 they thought they might get that they didn't.
Could be. Maybe it is. Okay, well, either way, with 10, I still think they could trade up multiple times. I would not be surprised. I've said it earlier. 1st, 2nd, 3rd rounds, Would not be surprised by any of those. I wouldn't be surprised very late either. They got 2 7th-rounders. If there's a safety they love early in the 7th round, move both of them to go get them. The fact that you have so many picks, you should be aggressive with them because you're not adding 10 guys to the roster.
We said that last year, and they did.
Are you okay? They did last year. Are they going to do it 2 years in a row?
That's a great question.
I cannot imagine they're going to add 20 rookies over the course of 2 years. I find that hard to imagine. Unless you think some of the guys you drafted late well, shoot, I mean, 2 of their guys they drafted in the 7th round last year were starters.
I know. That's why you just never know.
And then Brett Veach mentioned Najee Johnson today in his press conference, so it must like him to some degree. Now, I think they're going to move up multiple times. I would not be surprised if they moved up twice, maybe even more.
Moving on up.
They traded. How many trades did they make last year? 3?
Well, they moved up to get McDuffie and move up to get Kennard.
Yes.
That was the only 2 times that they moved.
And then they
up.
moved back once with the Patriots again when they took. That was when they took
Correct.
Sky, right? Yeah, that was when they took Sky Moore.
Yeah, they moved back because I was on the board of go get the Georgia wide receiver Pickens.
Yeah.
I could see them moving back in the 1st round and then maybe moving up in the 2nd, maybe the 3rd.
I could see that.
I always enjoy that. Would you rather have 1 first-round pick late, 1 second-round pick late, or 2 second-round picks in the middle?
This year, I would rather have the latter. I would rather have 2, like 2 between 32 and 50, I think.
That's why the draft is so fun. Or would you rather have a first-round pick at pick 20 and pick number 95?
Or have 2 in the 2nd round?
That type of thing. It's just fun. It's that's what's great about it.
I think the most intrigue or the most exciting day of the draft this year is going to be day 2. I think it's going to be Friday because I think that's where the best players are. Like, obviously, the best talent is at the very beginning.
Best players are not
like, yeah, Bryce Young is not going to slide to 42.
I don't think that's the case, Brendan.
But in terms of, like, the best value, I think is what you get on day 2 this year.
Okay.
Because I don't think – we're going to talk about this later this hour, but I don't think this is, like, the best draft I've ever seen. Like, it's fine.
No, I think
but there's not a lot of star power.
Yeah, it feels like there are a lot of solid NFL players, but like we are going to debate this later on. I don't want to, spill too much lest we give it all away and then we got to redo a 4:30 segment. But yeah, like the high end, like the stuff where you look at a guy and say that is absolutely going to be a guy who's multiple all pros, Pro Bowl every year, like that kind of player where you feel 100% comfortable saying it about them. I don't know that player's in the draft.
Let me ask you this question. Would you have considered last year a good draft?
For the NFL overall?
No, just like good players. Like you just said, I don't know if this is a good draft. Would you consider last year a good draft? That is a good draft.
I would have said, with the benefit of retrospect, there was more top-end talent last year than this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have said yes on terms of the top-end talent. No, maybe in terms of the entertainment value, because what's entertaining about this draft as opposed to last year is you got quarterbacks.
Okay.
And those are the most fun players to debate.
I'm just talking about players. I don't care about entertainment. I want meat and potatoes.
No, I would take last year.
Okay.
I think your first, like we're talking best players. Last year's first round was stronger than this year's.
How many Pro Bowlers were rookies this year?
You had Sauce, and I believe that was it. Unless there was one I'm scanning through right now.
Well, I don't want you to look. That was the whole point.
Well, okay. Well, I already had this up while you were asking the question. 2. There were 2.
There were 2. That's it.
Yeah,
That's
both corners, weirdly enough.
Tariq Woolen and so 2.
Yeah. How many are there on average?
It seems like there's more than just 2 every year, though. Like I look at the draft last year and I go, well, Trayvon Walker, not a huge, how many guys were like really good last year as rookies? Like, wow, this guy is going to be a stud.
Woolen, Sauce.
Okay, yeah, the 2 guys were
Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, Hutchinson for
Hutchinson,
sure.
Okay. But like, Drake London, who was picked 8th, wasn't, great. I thought Garrett Wilson was pretty good.
Garrett Wilson, offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah.
Chris Olave, but like Jamison Williams, I was big high on Jordan Davis. I mean, yeah, dude, you didn't even crack the lineup half the time.
I'm gonna push back on Drake London. Drake London had 866 yards playing with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, who I like. If you ask me in 2027, will he be an NFL quarterback? I might say no. He was so bad.
There were 2,000-yard rushers in that draft. Kenneth Walker III and Tyler Algier were both 1,000-yard rushers.
So like that's what I look like. Looking back
and
on
Damian
the
Pierce
draft,
almost was.
It just didn't seem like there was that many impact guys. So I'm wondering if this year might be different.
Man, I disagree. I think last year was full of impact guys. I think you need to have multiple years, though, to really know.
Yeah, I agree.
If you go 2 years back, so if you look at the 21 class, we have already had, just from the first round that year, 9 Pro Bowlers. Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons, Rashawn Slater, Mac Jones, Najee Harris. Now, Mac Jones, he's not very good. But other than 8 legit Pro Bowlers just from that first round.
I'll be interested to see how this draft compares to what they do next year then.
Real quick, you mentioned last year there were 2 Pro Bowlers. There were 2 AP first-team All-Pros in last year's draft. Sauce Gardner was one. Marcus Jones was the other as a return man for New England.
Yeah.
Pretty impactful in that role.
Ike Ekwonu, offensive tackle, NC State. Ended up in Carolina.
Charles Cross started all 17 games.
My point is that to me, though, and maybe it's just so close that it didn't seem like they're like a couple years ago, like in 2021, you remember that, like Rashawn Slater was awesome his very first year, right? He was terrific, Rashawn Slater. Some of the other guys, like you knew right away that they were special.
Sure.
I don't know if that's just one man's opinion. We'll wait and see from next year.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, if I had to guess from last year, there's a couple players I would say, like Aiden Hutchinson. I'd be surprised if he wasn't a Pro Bowler next year. I mean, he was phenomenal as a rookie. Garrett Wilson, same thing, especially if he has not Zach Wilson and Mike White throwing him the ball. I think he might be Pro Bowl caliber next year.
If they get who they think they're going to get, he's probably a 100-catch guy.
So it'll be fun to see how this year's draft. That's why I enjoy seeing from draft to draft how much just great players were taken in that draft.
By the way, totally different subject here. How nice is it to not have to worry about the Royals losing today? How nice is that?
I mean, I'm to the point where it's not a huge impact on my life anyways.
It is April 20th.
Yeah.
We're 20 days.
It is a non-zero chance that they're 4-17 when we talk on Monday.
Sure. Well, no, it'd be 4-18. They play 3 games.
They're 4-14 right now, aren't they?
No, 4-15.
Oh, either way. They're 4-18. Like, they're going to lose Sunday.
Remember yesterday when I said the way it can get worse is if people just stop caring?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, apathy. Apathy's the worst.
I think we found some.
Apathy's the worst. Yeah. I gave a date, May 11th. It's the 40-game mark. They're going to play 22 games after DeGrom because DeGrom's really good. They have 22 games against teams and people that I think are not the Braves or the Blue Jays or Jacob DeGrom. You know, like good players, right? They got the A's, they got the White Sox, they got the Diamondbacks. I mean, they got some teams that are beatable, right?
Sure.
Because they played a very good schedule. I'll give him that long. I'm going to give him that long. You know, I'm going to give him the good old, I mean, don't act like May 11th is a long leash, folks. That's 3 weeks before Memorial Day. That's 40 games.
So what would it take for you to not feel completely apathetic after that day?
These next 22 games, I go 500.
So you're out on May 11th then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On May 11th, wins and losses don't matter anymore. So if they lose every single game the rest of the way, but, you know, some people improve and do better, then it's a successful season to me.
Okay. Fair enough.
May 11th. That's the date.
How will you feel if they go 500 at that point?
Then I'll be like, hey, you know what? It was more about the schedule. This team is finding a way. But the schedule here is not that difficult.
It is pretty wild to go an entire month with 1 home win.
Yeah. Congratulations.
So bad.
Yeah. That's almost unthinkable.
Special. They're special.
That's one word for it.
At least they're not moving to Las Vegas.
Yeah, man. That's true. That sucks.
Yeah.
That really blows.
And the owner's going to sell the team once they move. That's so messed up. That's so messed up. I bet he will. I bet he does.
That'll be 3 lost teams in less than a decade in Oakland.
Yeah.
It
Isn't
has
that
nothing
crazy?
to do with their fan base because they like the A's.
No, nothing at all to do with them. Real quick, what's coming up tomorrow on Mic'd Up?
We'll talk a little. How many guys do they need to keep? How many draft picks do they need to keep? We're gonna talk about who's locked in at spots and everything like that.
You said how many guys we need to keep. We had just been talking about the Royals, so I thought that's what you were.
You can do that too.
Pasquantino.
With they got like 5.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We'll talk to you tomorrow at noon.
All right, sounds good.
That is Jake Lebahn from Mic'd Up joining us for a little crosstalk here on 580 Sports Talk. They will get by that magical May 11th date. They've got 10 straight road games starting tomorrow. But then after that, how about, 9 straight home games? No, 10 straight home games after that. Well, 10-game homestand.
Maybe they'll win more than one of those games.
They get to play the A's. Listen.
Wow.
I know the Royals are awful. I know they are. I have watched them plenty. I know they are really terrible. I just watched the Cubs play the A's 3 days in a row. And as much as I feel bad for A's fans and people who care about them because they're having their team ripped away, and we'll talk about that in the headlines today, that's one of the most embarrassingly bad baseball teams I've ever seen. Like, not just this team sucks, it's embarrassing to watch. I don't have anyone who can pitch. Their best pitcher may be a guy who made his major league debut yesterday, or at least a season debut coming up from the minors in Mason Miller. They have no one who can hit. I don't know that Mark Kotsay can manage. No one can know. No, how would you possibly know if Mark Kotsay can manage?
That is a team designed to be precisely what it is.
A punching bag. It's Glass Joe. You ever play Punch Out?
Yeah.
Either Mike Tyson's Punch Out or one of the later versions.
Glass Joe's the first guy you fight.
Yeah, the A's are Glass Joe.
And see, that's the thing. Like, of the 5 worst teams in baseball, at least the A's are going about this honestly. The A's went into this season like, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Watch it or don't. The Nationals, very similar. They came into this year and were very straight up and honest. Of the other teams that are the 5 worst in baseball, the Royals, Rockies, and Tigers, all to some degree, entered this year with at least the idea of we would like to be competitive, and they're not, which is worse, which is much worse. But boy, the A's come to town in May. The Rockies come to Kansas City in early June. The Nationals, do they go to DC or do they bring the Nationals here?
Great question. They've got the Nationals at home.
Oh, well, hey, listen, those have to find some wins there if you're the Royals.
Yeah.
God, those series are so gross. It's like I don't know if you're a big Ben Folds 5 guy, but you remember track 10 on whatever and ever and ever. Hey, man.
Yeah.
We had a real battle of who could care less.
This next month, in terms of opponents, is pretty rough. The Orioles, who are I mean, I don't know if I'd say respectable, but they're not miserable.
They're entertaining because they can swing the bat and they can't get anybody out.
Yeah.
Like, all of their games are ending like 8-7 on walk-offs. It's wild.
They are the Iowa Hawkeyes basketball of Major League Baseball, just scoring and not stopping anyone. So you get the Orioles, the A's, the White Sox. I mean, that's at least, division rivalry. Brewers, whatever. Padres, okay, they're fine. You get the White Sox again. Then you end the month with the Tigers and the Nationals as 2 of your final 3 series. And then you get the Cardinals for 2 as well. That's not the most incredible set of matchups for any team in Major League Baseball this year. I was going to ask, and maybe this is a question to ask tomorrow. There's a full segment. Where are the Royals in terms of rebuilding? Like, there's tear down. There's, you just suck because you have no players. There's, okay, we're starting to trickle in the new talent.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, okay, we're frisky. And then there's, we're actually winning.
This team don't look frisky to me.
Right. Well, you look back at 2013 or, the pre-2014 Royals years. Like, okay, you see the debuts, or you suck. You were absolute dirty brown water trash. You were horrible. Then it was like, hey, this is Mike Moustakas. Hey, this is Lorenzo Cain. Hey, this is Eric Hosmer. And then these guys are in their second year and they stunk, but hey, you're seeing something. Then you had 2013, which was a good year. There's 2012 in there too. You have 2013, which is a good year. 15 World Series appearances. Like, the Royals have been rebuilding for 5 years, and I think they're still stuck in the valley. Like, I don't think maybe they're a little past that because they've brought up Pasquantino. They've brought up Witt. They've brought up Melendez, who's not hitting well, but he's part of that group. but there's like we're in the desert here. There's no oasis in sight.
Yeah, you're still you know, it's if you're on the road to contention, you're not very far past one of those signs that says next service is 128 miles or whatever. One of those blue signs.
That's rough, man. We'll talk more about the Royals coming up tomorrow. Thankfully, we will not have to watch the Royals lose today, so that's a win for everybody. We've got to get to a timeout here, though, on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, we've got our What Is Wrong With You for today, and later this hour, we'll talk some more NFL draft. It's all coming up on this Thursday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Let's find our daily winner in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Our winner for the week so far is the wannabe Tony Soprano. He picked up the win earlier on this week. Gentleman in New Jersey who tried to burn down, well, in fact, he did burn down his rival bowling alley in Vinland, New Jersey. And with the help of some teenagers, some accelerants, really chaotic plan, really overly thought out plan. Went to jail for 8 years because of it. While I was in jail, tried to put a hit on some judges and some prosecutors. And I was going back to jail for trying to do that. And he's also getting in trouble because he was selling phony sports memorabilia to raise the money to pay for the hit. Got all that? That's our current winner for the week in What Is Wrong With You. Before we get to Dan's story for today, I want to remind you that What Is Wrong With You is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Top City Metal cuts the metal you need to your specifications, which saves your time, your money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Dan, you're up first today.
Yes, I am. And I just realized the link I gave you is to a subscription website you might not be subscribed to, defector.com. So I'm going to give you a more accessible link to experience the story of Joasia. Help.
Joasia.
It's Polish.
I'd say Zakrzewski? Zakrzewski?
Zakrzewski?
Zakrzewski could be it.
Wow,
there's a wild R just thrown in here between a K and a Z.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah, so how about we just go Joasia Z? Joasia Z is our story today. She is a 47-year-old ultra marathoner, and she was running in the 50-mile Manchester to Liverpool ultra marathon on April 7th, and she finished third. Pretty good. 7 hours, 25 minutes, 17 seconds. I could not run 50 miles in 7 hours. I could not run 50 miles at all.
No.
I think I'm probably out of gas by the end of mile 2.
So how many minutes is that approximately? 450 miles in 420 minutes? That's like that's under 8.5 minutes a mile for 420 miles?
Yeah, 7 hours and 25 minutes is about 445 minutes for 50 miles.
50 miles. I'm sorry, 50 miles. No, I could not do that. Absolutely no chance.
That's pretty impressive. Well, Joasia Z couldn't do it either, as it turns out. The race results were updated a few days later, and there was a new third place finisher, Mel Sykes. And Mel Sykes, at Nutty Pants, Nuddy Pants on Twitter.
Oh, good.
Explained why. Joasia Z completed 48 of the 50 miles of this ultra marathon. But for 2 of them in the middle of the race, she got in a car. Actually, 2.5 miles. Pretty impressive that she was in a car for 2.5 miles of the 50 miles and still only finished third.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's pretty wild. How did people find out about Joasia's deception? Well, there's this app called Strava that you can have on your watch or your mobile device that
I have it right here.
Hey,
I use it when I run.
You're a Strava user. Yes,
Yeah.
many people who run recreationally or competitively use the app so they can see their splits or their cadence, their heart rate, their stats, so they can log their run, things like that. Well, Joasia logged her run to Strava, and so in the middle of her race, there's mile 39, 2 minutes and 5 seconds. That following consecutive 11-minute miles. Mile number 40, 1 minute, 57 seconds. Both of those, by the way, would be world record mile splits. Then for mile 41, it was back to 9 minutes and 15 seconds. Also uploaded her pace and her heart rate, which was just a flat resting 94 beats per minute, and her cadence, which is steps per minute.
Yeah.
Her cadence for those miles was 0 because she wasn't running. She was in a car. So Joasia acknowledged that she made, quote, a massive error in accepting the third place trophy at the race. She said she was feeling sore and started limping when she saw a friend on the side of the course who offered to give her a ride. The 47-year-old intended to ride to the next checkpoint to tell marshals she was pulling out of the race. But after the car ride, officials, she says, encouraged her to continue.
Oh, yeah.
Quote, when I got to the checkpoint, I told them I was pulling out, that I had been in the car, and they said, you will hate yourself if you stop. I agreed to carry on in a non-competitive way. I made sure I didn't overtake the runner in front when I saw her, as I didn't want to interfere with her race. I made a massive error in accepting the trophy and should have handed it back. I was tired and jet-lagged and felt sick. But there she is, smiling ear to ear with her third place trophy, which she posted to her Facebook page. Like, look at me, I finished third. Please don't look too closely at this Strava data I just uploaded.
Very dumb. Very, very dumb.
Joasia has apologized to Mel Sykes, the new third place winner, saying, quote, I'm an idiot and want to apologize to Mel. It wasn't malicious. It was miscommunication. So Joasia has actually been a successful at this. She's not an interloper. She's a professional. She's done this before.
Mm-hmm.
She has some Scottish records for 24-hour marathoning, the 100-mile run.
Wow.
Yeah, she's really about hers, but on this particular day, couldn't do it. Got in a car, decided to get out of the car and keep running, and then was like, yeah, third place, baby.
Next time I'm doing the hills at Rock Chalk Park, I'm going to give someone a call, see if they'll come pick me up and take me up the hill.
Did they really think nobody was going to notice uploading the Strava data? And she goes from 12 minutes to 9 minutes to 11 minutes to 11 minutes to consecutive world record times with 0 steps per minute. She even swing her arms in the back of the car.
Just shake the Strava up
Yes,
and down
exactly.
like a pedometer to get the extra steps. Oh my God, that's so funny. She probably thought like, oh, it's only 2.5 miles. Like, no one will care if it's only 2.5 miles. 2.5 out of 50. Oh no, I'm fine. I'm Gucci. Oh my God, that's funny. My story today is going to take us to Miami-Dade County, Florida, where we have a woman who I think it is fair to say was doing the most. A woman from the Little Havana neighborhood of Miami is facing a series of felony charges after police accused her of a bizarre series of crimes, beginning with a stolen pressure washer and ending with a burning Mazda in a farm field. This is that falling dominoes meme again come to life. So we meet 27-year-old Ivis Alberto on Tuesday. However, according to an arrest report, the series of crimes actually began all the way back at the end of February in the Palmetto Estates neighborhood of southwest Miami-Dade County. According to the report, just before 3 a.m. that day, what do I always say? Nothing good happens after 2 a.m. Alberto went to her ex-boyfriend's house on southwest 156th Street, entered his yard without permission, and began to drag a pressure washer belonging to a second victim out to her blue Mazda CX-5 parked down the street. Due to previous altercations, Alberto's ex-boyfriend decided to call the police for assistance. While he and the other victim were outside checking for any damage to vehicles in the driveway, as similarly caused by Alberto in the past, he observed a vehicle driving at a high rate of speed down the street that abruptly turned onto his driveway. She was trying to hit this guy and his potentially new partner. According to police, Alberto was behind the wheel, driving her Mazda straight at the pair. Her ex took out a gun and began firing at her vehicle multiple times in fear of his life. The report then states that Alberto reversed, then put her car in drive again, purposefully crashing into a gray Toyota Corolla used by the second victim. The victim later told police that Alberto had vandalized her vehicle in a similar manner. I think we're seeing some dots being connected here, but she chose not to report it to police. Early the next morning, an officer on agricultural patrol saw Alberto's Mazda on fire in an open field near the intersection of 138th and 162nd, abutting southwest Miami-Dade County's Walk area. According to a second police report, Alberto had reported the vehicle stolen after the events of February 24th. She told Miami police and her insurance company the car had been stolen from her home on 8th Avenue sometime between the evening of the 23rd and 24th, saying she had last seen it the night of the 23rd. Surveillance video, however, showed her driving on February 24th, and cell phone data obtained by Miami-Dade police placed her in the same farm field where the car was found ablaze. Alberto had been behind on her auto insurance payments, but brought her policy up to date in the hours between the driveway incident and when she set the SUV on fire. She was then arrested at her workplace Tuesday afternoon. So to recap all the events of this story, this woman wanted some revenge on her ex-boyfriend and his new partner. So she stole their pressure washer. Then when the boyfriend and his new partner came out, she tried to hit them with her car. He fired a gun at her. She then destroyed the new girlfriend's car and lit her own car on fire. There's a big jump between those two, to be completely honest with you. But that's what got Miss Alberto in jail right now, where she's being held on 2 charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and 1 count of felony criminal mischief, tampering with evidence, second-degree arson, burning to defraud an insurer, filing false insurance claims, and filing a false police report in the commission of a crime.
Burning to defraud an insurer. It's one of my favorite crime names, crime distinctions I think we've ever encountered here.
It's my new favorite FXX show. Yeah, she was doing the most.
She was doing so much.
Yeah.
Any stories that has bizarre series of crimes in the lead is never going to disappoint.
Yeah, like a good series of crimes. Adds a little spice to it. That's a good day. I think I'm going to lean with the runner.
I am too.
Why did you upload this? You know, as I said, I use Strava when I go for runs. It takes like 10 minutes, depending on the length of the run, for it to fully like upload.
Mm-hmm.
I assume I don't ever have to do that because I'm doing like a couple miles, a few miles of running.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never doing ultra marathons, but I imagine you can stop the process of it uploading. Like, I imagine there's a cancel button somewhere or a delete button somewhere. Why would you let this get uploaded?
Yeah, because like I understand if you're a completist and you want all your data, and she very obviously this is beyond a hobby for you. This is something that Joasia has done competitively for quite some time. But I kind of think you have to throw the data out of any race where you were in a car for part of it. Like, I feel like you might just want to set that one aside and say, this isn't at any point an accurate reflection of me, both before I got in the car because I was running so poorly, and after I got in the car when I was rejuvenated for having spent time in a car.
Yeah, that wins today. That's really funny.
I think it might be the fake Tony Soprano. It's the new Rosie Ruiz with much lower stakes. We all remember, and shout out to Mark on the Twitter, the YouTube comments for bringing up the cheating marathoner from the 80s. Rosie Ruiz like rode the subway to win the Boston Marathon. One of the most famous sports cheaters in history.
Yeah, extremely funny. Yeah, I might agree with you. It's really the lying. Like, the story itself is funny enough, but then the lying. Well, they told me I'd hate myself if I didn't do this. Are you sure about that?
Like,
what do you mean by that?
I shouldn't have accepted the trophy. Like, okay, like maybe, like I don't know what running 50 miles or even 47 and a half, as was her case. I don't know what that does to your brain. I don't know what that does. I'm sure your body is screaming profanities at you at that point.
Yeah.
But like, you don't have to take pictures with the trophy. You don't have to be smiling ear to ear with the trophy. You don't have to post on Facebook, hey, took third place in the marathon. Like, come on. At some point, you're beyond delirium and you're just trying to take credit for something you didn't do.
That's funny. That's your weekly winner?
That is not, yeah, I think that one moves on.
I'll vote with you. That is our new weekly winner for What Is Wrong With You. Brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. That's Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field here in the capital city. Let's get to a break. We'll talk some NFL draft next on 580 Sports Talk. on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on this Thursday afternoon. No Royals baseball today. We're off right at 6. You hear a little Dave Ramsey coming up on 580 WIBW after that. Dan asked me a question earlier today, and I thought it was very interesting. Looking at this NFL draft class, which players, if there are any, can we project, or which players does it look like maybe have Hall of Fame potential? If you go back in recent memory, most every class, not all of them, but most of them have at least a couple players either recently where you can say, yeah, you can see it. Like, 2017 draft. I wonder if there's anyone with Hall of Fame potential in that class. Like, yeah, duh. But even more recently than that, like if you want to look at 2020, for example, like, could you realistically say, yeah, I could see it with Burrow? Like, yeah. I can see that. Sure. That's just one right off the top of your head. Quarterbacks are always easy for this. And there's some classes. We talked about, 2011 the other day? That's one of the best drafts of all time.
Yeah.
Is there anyone in this class who to you is a true, and it's not always the true can't miss guy. Like, I don't think anyone in 2011 said, oh, yeah, J.J. Watt, no doubt, like Hall of Fame for sure. Mm-hmm. But there were plenty of players you say, oh, yeah, that dude might be real good. Is there anyone that feels that way in this class?
So, like, the odds are, right, that I think the average NFL draft, not counting ones that most of their draftees are still active players, has produced somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3 to 4 Hall of Famers. Mm-hmm. So that's just on average, not first rounds, like the totality of the draft has produced that many Hall of Famers. Some drafts produce more, like 2011 is going to produce a lot. Some drafts, like 1992, go look it up. 1992, 0 Hall of Famers drafted in the 1992 draft, unless Darren Woodson makes it in, and he might. I think he's been a finalist a couple of times.
Yeah,
but nobody from that 1992 draft is in the Hall of Fame. So that means chances are pretty good. Somebody who hears their name called, multiple somebodies who hears their name called in Kansas City next weekend is going to go to Canton someday. I'll give you 3 names.
Okay.
The first is Will Anderson, because I think he's the best player in the class, regardless of position.
That is a name that has been at the forefront of draft fatigue this year, because recently I've seen people say, he's good, but does he have the explosion? Can he do this? Dude, he's been considered the best player in college football for 2 years in a row. He's been considered the best defensive player, maybe best player, period, in this class for 2 years. Come on. So I'm with you. I think he's the best player overall in the class.
The second name I'll give you, the next 2 names I'm going to give you, because I think it's easier to see it with offensive players. Like, you just see their ceiling is a little higher. And I can't give you that with any of the quarterbacks. Like, the ceiling is there for a Hall of Fame career for like a Bryce Young, or even like athletically, you could see it for Anthony Richardson. But like, are they going to figure it out? What are the odds of that? I don't know. I don't think they're very strong. But I'll give you 2 offensive players. One is Bijan Robinson. There's a reason that people are talking about him as somebody who can go in the first round, maybe even go in the top 10. Like, talent-wise, this is it. This is the best running back prospect to come into the league probably since Saquon Barkley.
Yes, without a doubt.
And I think he has the chance, wherever he ends up, to put up big numbers, to be durable, to be versatile, and like the range of possibilities for him at his position. I think we're going to have to rethink after a while, like what the criteria for a Hall of Fame running back is, just like we've done it in baseball, where we look at pitchers now and we rethink what you have to do to be a Hall of Fame pitcher. Used to be, you got to win 300 games. Well, nobody's doing that anymore. So now there are new benchmarks, and there will be new benchmarks for running backs, I think, in the long distant future, when we talk about running backs going to the Hall of Fame. Like Bijan Robinson, I think, talent-wise, has a chance to be one of those. And then the other guy I give you, honest to goodness, Dalton Kincaid.
I mean, I love that. Maybe my favorite player in the draft.
So Danny Kelly at The Ringer does his draft grade, or his draft guide. Mm-hmm. He does grades, but he does a draft guide. He has his mock draft. And part of the reason that I thought about this topic is there aren't a lot of like, because he'll write about the prospect and then he'll say shades of, or like who this player reminds him of. And as I was reading through his list, the shades of players in this draft were not like a lot of Hall of Famers. A lot of really good players, but not a lot of Hall of Famers. Because I understand that too, because it's hard to compare somebody who's never played an NFL game with somebody who is on the Hall of Fame path.
Right.
Dalton Kincaid got written up, and his comparable, his shades of was, and I'm quote paraphrasing here, I don't want to say it, but we're all thinking it. In reference,
whoever could that be?
Yes, in reference to a certain Super Bowl winning tight end. Like that's the kind of ceiling Dalton Kincaid has. And again, maybe easier as a all-time great tight end to get in the Hall of Fame as it would be if you're all-time great at another position, less of a log jam at tight end, perhaps. So those are the three guys I'll give you that if I could put a little scratch on that kind of a futures bet for player X to make the Hall of Fame, I think those would be the three guys I would put a little sprinkle on.
Among the tight ends, I would say if you're making that argument, I think Kincaid is the best one you can make it for, because I think he's got an elite skill that no one else has. Like Meyer, you could probably argue is the best. He's the best of the true tight ends.
The inline tight end.
Yeah, the inline, the Y tight end. And he's just very good all around. He doesn't have great speed, but it's good. He doesn't have perfect hands, but they're good. His size is good. His blocking is good. He's just solid all around. Darnell Washington is a huge project with massive upside, but I've also seen people say he's faster Mercedes Lewis, which, I mean, hell, Mercedes Lewis is 100 years old and still playing in the NFL. That'd be great. That's a great career. That's not Hall of Fame. And Luke Musgrave, I don't trust at all. I mean, he's got a great athletic profile, but I don't trust guys who have barely played football. He's only played like 20 games in 4 years. So of anyone in that category, I would say Kincaid certainly has the best chance. Bijan is fascinating to me because he's such a good player. And I think he will be an instant impact, great NFL player. Since 2016, and I'm using that year for a reason, who would you say has been the best running back in the NFL?
Since 2016?
Yeah, so we're looking at like the last 7 seasons.
Derrick Henry?
I think Derrick Henry's a Hall of Famer. He's got 4,000-yard seasons. Another season when he got to 937 and he only played 8 games. Mm-hmm. That's nutty.
Yeah.
But 4 years over 1,000 yards, one that should have been, we'll count it as 5, a second-team All-Pro, a first-team All-Pro, Offensive Player of the Year in 2020. And he's got 78 career touchdowns. Is that a Hall of Famer? If he probably declines a little bit in the next couple of years, but is still, 1,000-ish yard rusher.
What's his career yards right now?
83-35. If
he gets to 10, then I think I would say he's a Hall of Famer.
So and maybe that's a good point, that it's sort of like pitchers in the past where, 300 wins. Maybe it is 10,000 career yards you're in, or 100 career touchdowns or whatever. And that's enough to get you in.
Or if you're the offensive player of the year.
Yeah.
And like, if you were like, again, this is kind of it's subjective more than it's objective more than it's subjective. But, I guess it is subjective more than subjective, but like best player his position for like undisputed, like that would be the guy.
Yeah.
If you were drafting a team, you could have the monsters of professional football and your running back spot. That would have been Derrick Henry for a solid 3-4 years. Like I think if you have a 3-4 year run where you're the answer to that question, you're probably a Hall of Famer.
That's fair. Like it's kind of the all decade team thing, right? Like if you're good enough to be one of the 2 best at your spot for a duration of 10 years, you deserve to be in that spot.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say Bijan Robinson and Derrick Henry are the same player, because they're not. They're actually, I think, quite different. I think Bijan's got a higher ceiling as a receiver as well than Derrick Henry has. But I just think for the better part of the last decade, that has been the gold standard of running backs in the NFL. Him and McCaffrey, when he's healthy, I think are the top 2. And Henry's probably got a good claim if he keeps playing at a similar level to this, but anything less, it's going to be hard to get in. I think Bijan's got the capability, though. I think he does. I think as much as I love Saquon Barkley and loved him coming out, I would argue Bijan's got a higher NFL ceiling than Saquon.
Bijan and Dalton Kincaid are the 2 guys that I think are the likeliest to, at any point in their careers, be considered the best players at their positions.
That's a good way to frame that.
Yeah.
I like that. And I would agree with you on both of those points. We've got to get to a timeout for the news. We'll start the 5 o'clock hour with our 580 Sports Talk headlines coming up after this. on this Thursday edition of 580 Sports Talk with Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero. Thanks for joining us throughout the show today. If you've missed either of the first 2 hours, or both of them for that matter, head to our website, 580wibw.com. Hover your cursor over the podcasts tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk. That'll take you to our page with our hour-by-hour podcast version of the show. You can also go back and watch the show on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel. You can tune in for the live stream. And, of course, you can just rewind. If you missed something from the 4 o'clock hour, just swoop right on back. You can go see Crosstalk with Jake or our Hall of Fame draft prospect talk. What is wrong with you? Any of that. You can do it all on YouTube. And go check out our catalog of old live streams as well. Our channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. This hour, we will get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. That's here in just a moment. We'll look ahead to some of the action coming up tonight in the NBA and NHL playoffs, some baseball picks as well. Plus, we will talk about a new 30 for 30 podcast, the new 30 for 30 podcast series. It's called The Bag Game, and it features a story we've heard, quite a bit about since 2017, the investigation into college basketball and, Billy Preston and all that. And we're going to hear about Billy Preston. He's a major part of this. The mythical KU great, Billy Preston. We're going to hear from, or about him anyway, coming up in a little bit. Dan got to listen to the first 2 episodes of The Bag Game, and we'll break that down and what Dan thought about it coming up here in just a little bit. And we're still taking your texts on the text line, 785-272-9429. And we are taking your comments on YouTube as well. Again, the name of our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today. And our first one, my first one anyway, is that we've got another team that is on the move to Las Vegas and out of Oakland, California. The Oakland Athletics have signed a binding agreement to purchase land near the Las Vegas Strip, which is where they intend to construct a major league ballpark. That is according to Dave Cavall, the president of the Oakland A's, on late Wednesday night. Now, this is going to be this plot of land is near the T-Mobile Center, or T-Mobile Arena. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, it's T-Mobile Arena.
Okay. One of the 14 different venues where you can play basketball in Las Vegas. There's so many of them.
I think it is the hockey primarily.
Okay.
It is the home of the Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay, understandable then. And none of that is too far from where Allegiant Stadium is, if I'm not mistaken.
Just north up the strip, like maybe a mile.
This is not the first time that the A's have purchased or have gotten into a quote-unquote binding agreement. They have done this before. However, there is a major difference this time. And the big difference is that the mayor of Oakland has said, we're done. We are out. They are ceasing negotiations between the city and the team, and they are moving forward on alternatives for the redevelopment of Howard Terminal, which is the area in Oakland where there was the final effort to build a new stadium for the A's in that city. We talked about that a couple years ago when it popped up on the show, and we talked about it during headlines that, hey, I would rather have the team stay there. It's going to suck if the taxpayers have to pay for it in California. I don't know if they would be willing to do that in Oakland. Don't know if they'd be willing to do that.
And they weren't. At the end of the day, that's why this is happening, because the Oakland Athletics ownership group has come hat in hand saying, hey, we need public investment. We need public dollars. We need taxpayer dollars to pay for this new stadium, or we're going to leave. And the people of Oakland have said, pay for your own damn stadium. We'll support the team, but pay for your own damn stadium.
If I'm not mistaken, and I might be, you might know more about this than I do, I believe there was going to be some sort of public-private collaboration on a terminal or a Howard Terminal Stadium. If they had done that, there would have been Fisher and the ownership group would have paid for a lot of it, but the public also would have contributed.
Yes, that's what they all are in the end. I mean, none of these you wouldn't get the votes if you said this is going to be 100% taxpayer funded stadium. Build me a stadium. But no, there's still enough of the public part of that public-private combination that the people of Oakland were not interested in, because the ownership group of the A's, they're not broke. They got money. They got plenty of money.
They were born into money.
They've got enough money to buy 49 acres on the Strip. So they've got the money to build a stadium if Oakland is where they want to be. They tried to extort the people of Oakland, and the mayor of Oakland today, her name is Shang Thao, and she said in a statement today, "I'm deeply disappointed the A's have chosen not to negotiate with the city of Oakland as a true partner in a way that respects the long relationship between the fans, the city, and the team. Yet it is clear to me that the A's have no intention of staying in Oakland and have simply been using this process to try to extract a better deal out of Las Vegas. I am not interested in continuing to play that game. The fans and our residents deserve better." So now the ownership group, John Fisher's the owner of the team.
Mhm.
You want a John Fisher take? We'll ask Matt Verderam, friend of the program,
Yeah, we will.
and big A's fan, about John Fisher. And all you need to know about what John Fisher has done to the Oakland Athletics in his time as the owner is look at the standings.
Mhm.
Go to baseballreference.com today and look at the standings and find the Oakland A's. And that's what John Fisher is as an owner. That is his legacy. The team president is a guy named Dave Cavall. He's the one that does all the talking.
Mhm.
Like John Fisher is the silent partner, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like he's got all the money, but he doesn't do a lot of talking. Dave Cavall is the one that does all the talking.
Mhm.
And he's the one that says this is what the stadium is going to be. And of course, it's a public-private partnership between the A's and the state of Nevada, Clark County, where Las Vegas is located. $1.5 billion, 35,000 seat stadium with a partially retractable roof. The A's hope to break ground by next year, hope to be moved in by 2027. Cavall told the Las Vegas Review-Journal, "Oakland has been a great home for us for over 50 years, but we really need this 20-year saga completed, and we feel there's a path here in Southern Nevada to do that."
Over under 2027, the time they actually move. Like, there's no way they're going to stay till 27. No way.
If they get the ability to start building the stadium, yeah, they'll be out of there as soon as they possibly can.
Because look at other instances in recent memory of teams overstaying their welcome or moving early or whatever it ends up being. The number one example of this will always be the Oilers, who tried to stay through the end of their lease in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And no one went, and it was empty at Oilers
they
games.
Punted them out, so they had to play. They played at Vanderbilt Stadium for a year.
Yeah, because Memphis didn't want them. They said, "Oh, we'll go to Memphis for 2 years while they build what's now Nissan Stadium." And Memphis said, "You're just gonna leave? No, don't come here." So they played at Vandy Stadium. Yeah, as the Tennessee Oilers before they were the Tennessee Titans. I can't imagine they stick around. They already only get 4,500 people a game.
Yeah, and obviously the stadium is completely subpar. That is, of course, correct. That it is not tenable for a professional sports team to be playing in the decrepit and rundown and apparently possum-infested Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. Like, that doesn't work.
How convenient, by the way. This literally just now popped up on my Twitter timeline. It's a show, I think it's a YouTube show called Foul Territory, baseball show and podcast. They had Ken Rosenthal on, and he gave this exact quote this afternoon. Yeah, they draw 5,000, and you know why. Because the owner, John Fisher, has wrecked the club. Yeah, they got plenty of fans.
Yeah.
Tons of A's fans.
Like, when they've been good, and they have, in recent memory, there's they were in the American League Championship Series in 2014. I think they were a playoff team in 2020. Which I know, weird year, but I think also they were a playoff team the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go and double check that, but it's not as though they've been, 20 years and they've been lousy. They went to 3 consecutive playoffs. They were in the postseason, 2018, 2019, 2020. They won 97 games in 2018 and 2019. And that was only good enough to get to the wild card because Astros. And they lost the wild card game both times. They made it to the division series in 2020, lost in the division series. So they won their they won their fake series and they reached the division series and they got beat. And then they won 86 games the year after that, 2021. They won 60 games last year. They're 3-16 this year. And part of that is just kind of the A's have been and operated like a small market franchise in their history. You look at they made a movie about this. Like, this isn't literally.
And you don't have to operate like Moneyball. Like, they never had to do that.
Especially not because Oakland and like the Bay Area is not small.
No, it's not. It's huge.
It's one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country.
Now, I can't help but think there's a little like cruel irony to this. During the Cubs A's series this weekend, the fill-in color commentator for the Cubs, Rick Sutcliffe, won the 1984 Cy Young. Cubs great, played for a long, long time.
Used to do games on ESPN.
Yes, he did. He's a Kansas City guy. He grew up in Kansas City. He went to Independence High School. He's a KC guy, and he said, people always ask me growing up, why aren't you a Royals fan? He's like, because I was an A's fan. And when the A's left, it crushed me, and it was horrible. And he talked about how he, even going to Oakland as a pro, it didn't feel right that the A's were here. And there's just something like cruel about now those people who grew up with the A's being in Oakland and that being their team, they're now having it ripped away because the owner is a cheapskate.
So this is the history of the Athletics franchise.
Right.
They have been an itinerant franchise. It's them and the Atlanta, formerly Milwaukee, formerly Boston Braves that are the only teams to have like 3 homes. Obviously, in 1901, they began as the Philadelphia Athletics. They played in Philadelphia. They won 5 World Series championships in Philadelphia. And then they became really, really bad in Philadelphia. And they moved after the 1954 season to Kansas City. And I'm sure there's a certain vintage of listener who remembers the Kansas City Athletics. They weren't around long, only a dozen years, 1955, 1967, before they moved to Oakland. And they were very successful in Oakland. Champions in 1972, 73, and 74. Again in 1989. There's a lot of great history of the Oakland A's. It's a very evocative franchise, whether you're talking about the Kelly green and gold uniforms, whether you're talking about some of the star players they've had in their history, Reggie Jackson, Ricky Henderson, the Bash Brothers, the Moneyball teams with the 3 aces, Zito, Mulder, and Hudson. Like they've been, we're one of the oldest teams in baseball history, and they've been in Oakland for a really long time, but there was always the threat that they would leave Oakland. I had, as a kid, my dad had, for whatever reason, saved like a bunch of old books.
Yeah.
And this old book he had, it was a season preview for, I think it was either 1977 or 1978. And it was a season Major League Baseball preview. And you know how the Oakland A's were referenced in that book? They were called Oakland/Denver. Because when that book went to press, it was not clear that Oakland was going to be playing in Oakland, and there was a very strong possibility they were going to move to the Mile High City in the late 70s. So, had only been in Oakland for a decade at the time.
Wow.
And it looked like they were going to move to Denver. It was so possible, in fact, that you had to go to press with a book and put Oakland/Denver. So that's kind of the threat has always loomed because that's how ownership has been for most. And it's obviously Charlie O'Finley's very dead, but that's just always how they've been run. And through all of that, they have the support of a passionate sports city with great sports history. Like the sports history of Oakland is unbelievable. People that ride for Oakland and represent Oakland, go from Bill Russell to Marshawn Lynch and all points in between. Like it's such a great sports city. And in 10 years, they're going to lose everything. They're going to lose the Raiders again. They've already done that.
Already lost them.
They've lost the Warriors. They moved across the bay. They play in San Francisco now.
And if you didn't know any better, you might say, well, that's not that far. Still the Bay Area. I think people out there would tell you there is a big difference between downtown San Francisco and downtown Oakland.
There's a reason people are either A's or Giants fans.
Right. Yeah, you don't have not a lot of Giants fans in the East Bay, I don't think. Now you're going to lose your baseball team too. 2 thoughts real quick, because we do have other headlines to get to. One, I can only think of a handful of teams in any sport that have been in 3 different cities. You've got as you mentioned, the Braves have been in multiple places. You mentioned, obviously, the A's, we're talking about right now. In football, the Cardinals, they've been to Chicago, they've been to St. Louis, they've been to Phoenix. Now Glendale, same thing. The NBA, the Hawks, have been to a number of different places.
Just St. Louis, I think.
No, I actually had to double check this. Before they were in St. Louis, they spent 4 seasons in Milwaukee. And before they were in Milwaukee, they spent 2 seasons as the Tri-Cities Blackhawks. They're a direct line. So they've actually moved to like 4 different places.
If we're talking
that
NBA,
was in Buffalo.
If we're talking NBA, then we have to talk about the Cincinnati Royals turned Kansas City Kings, turned Kansas City Omaha Kings, turned Sacramento Kings. And in the National Hockey League, you have the Kansas City Scouts / Colorado Rockies / New Jersey Devils.
That's it.
Good trivia question.
That's a great trivia question. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, there's never been that just doesn't happen very often, and it sucks. And I feel for their fans. The other question too that they're going to have to ask themselves: look at the teams that have moved or developed in Las Vegas. The Golden Knights. They're Vegas's thing. They became an organization from the ground up in Las Vegas. They are homegrown to the core, and they won. They won instantly because the rules for the expansion team were preposterous. But they won immediately, and they are Vegas's thing from the very beginning. It's understandable why they have been successful and profitable, and people come out like crazy to watch them.
Mm-hmm.
The Raiders have not been winning, and their stadium is largely filled almost entirely with out-of-town people, but they do have two things working for them. One, LA is not that far, and LA is still a Raiders town more than it's either a Rams or Chargers town. And it's not that far of a drive to get, or a long flight to get from LA to Las Vegas. So that's a lot of your home team fans, and it's football. And you're always going to sell out football games in the US because it is just that popular and that much of an institution. Who's going to go to A's games in Vegas? Like, you're going to get people who say, oh, I've never had a baseball team, but now that we have one here, hell yeah, I'm an A's fan. But who's going to go? They suck. And their farm system is bad. They don't have anything.
They got a long way to go before they're going to be competitive again. And at least with football, like, you can plan for a certain element of visiting fan that's going to be there, because you can plan a weekend around seeing your team play the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little tougher with baseball. I mean, you plan for more days, more games, I guess. But yeah, it's different.
Very different.
There's like the baseball culture in Vegas doesn't quite match like how football culture in Vegas matches.
Right. Because it's like the big thing. Like, you go, you get drunk and party, you go watch a football game, you gamble until you get up at 9 a.m. for your flight the next day. Like, it's a perfect fit. Baseball's not that same way. So I don't think this is a cure-all, like, oh, everything's going to be hunky-dory as soon as we move. I have a hard time seeing that.
By the way, there is one other trivia answer to teams that have been in 3 cities, and this is the one that would lose you the bar trivia. So remember this one if you ever want to win bar trivia. In the original iteration of the American League in 1901, there was a team called the Milwaukee Brewers. They lasted 1 year. They moved to St. Louis. They were the Browns until 1953 when they moved to Baltimore.
How about that? Became the Orioles.
So you learned something today.
That's tremendous.
You learned something on 580 Sports Talk.
Let's get to some other headlines.
Let's do it. How about our playoff roundup? Does that sound good?
Yeah!
Playoffs?
Playoff roundup. Let's start in the NHL, where the Hurricanes, Panthers, yes, I said Panthers over the Bruins.
Oh.
Stars and Oilers were all winners last night. The Canes, the only one of those teams to have a 2-0 series lead. The Panthers, Stars, and Oilers leveling their series with their wins last night. Tonight, Game 2 in the Eastern Conference first round between the Rangers and Devils, and the Lightning and the Leafs. Both road teams won Game 1. Both road teams also won Game 1 in the Western Series that resumed tonight. The Kings and the Golden Knights in Vegas, the Kraken and the Avalanche in Denver. In the NBA last night, the Milwaukee Bucks and Memphis Grizzlies bounced back at home to even their respective first-round playoff series. The Bucks throttling the Miami Heat to the Eastern Conference, and the Grizzlies holding off the Lakers at home to even that Western Series up at 1-1. The Denver Nuggets weathered a third-quarter rally by the Minnesota Timberwolves, got 40 points for Jamal Murray to take a 2-0 lead in their series against the Timberwolves in the West. Tonight, the Philadelphia 76ers and Brooklyn Nets play in Brooklyn. Sixers go on the road up 2-0 in that series. The Kings and the Warriors face each other at the aforementioned newer arena for the Warriors, the Chase Center in San Francisco. Sacramento, of course, up 2-0 in that series. No Draymond Green for the Warriors tonight. He is suspended for stepping on Domantas Sabonis in Game 2. The Suns and the Clippers play Game 3 at Crypto.com Arena. No Kawhi Leonard tonight for the Clips. He is out with a knee injury, and day-to-day moving forward, Clippers already shorthanded without Paul George.
That's significant, and that line has moved a lot, if you're interested in that.
Boy, I bet.
Yeah, I got it a little bit too late after the news that it had already moved, but it has moved more ever since then. I got it at 6.5.
By the way, speaking of line movement, lines, betting, basketball, we both liked Denver minus 8.5 last night.
That we did.
Bit of a sweat.
Yep.
But won by 9.
I started live betting it because I was a little late, and I thought, oh, no, they're cruising. They're going to be fine. And then suddenly they forgot how to play basketball, the Nuggets did.
It was very strange. Denver was up in that game 15 at the half. And then I think there's a bit of human nature you have to fight. Like even Chuck and Shaq were saying this on the Inside the NBA postgame. Like you spend 6 quarters just dominating a team.
Mhm.
Like it's a little bit of human nature. You kind of switch off a little bit. And for the Nuggets, switching off meant giving up 40 points on 80% shooting in the third quarter and actually trailing going into the fourth. And then Michael Porter Jr. scored 8 straight points. And then Jamal Murray came back in off the bench and went Super Saiyan. He does not like the Bubble Murray moniker. If you recall, perhaps you do, from the bubble playoffs in 2020 when he had those 3 straight memorable duels with Donovan Mitchell of then the Utah Jazz. Kind of became Bubble Murray, kind of became a thing as he helped lead the Nuggets to the Western Conference Finals. And Jamal Murray says, that's me. That's not like,
Yep.
I'm like, that's who I am. I'm
Yep.
not just a product of the bubble. This is my get down.
Right.
And he proved it last night. He had 40. Ant-Man had 41 for Minnesota, Anthony Edwards. So we had Jamal versus Spida in the bubble. Now we got Jamal versus Ant-Man in these playoffs.
This man hates insects.
Spiders aren't insects. I learned that last night too. They're invertebrates.
I did not know that.
I didn't either.
I don't know if I knew they were insects for sure, but okay, that's good to know. I love Jamal Murray. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. I absolutely love his game. I have since he was at Kentucky. I remember seeing him in 2016 at Allen Fieldhouse, that 15-16 year. There was the night the rules of basketball were unveiled and all that. David Booth was there. Naismith's grandkids were there. And I remember watching him play and thinking, that dude is special. He was best player on the floor, I thought, for Kentucky in that game. In a game where Tyler Ulis was also awesome. KU won, by the way.
I was worried when the Nuggets drafted him that he might be a little too small. That was stupid to worry about. I should not have worried about him in that fashion. He rules. I'm a big Jamal Murray guy.
Yeah, huge fan of him.
As if the people watching today couldn't tell.
Yeah, with the Nuggets.
Big
Nuggets
Jamal Murray guy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a stressful game. I'm not gonna lie. That was worrying me a little bit.
If you felt that way, imagine how your boy was going through it last night.
I lost a bet in the NHL on the Oilers in the first game. I had them winning outright. Then they didn't. You may have noticed they yacked that one away to the Kings. So I bet them again last night. I thought there's no way they lose to the Kings at home a second time in a row.
I think you're probably right.
And for the entirety of the third period, they were up by 1, and the Kings had chance after chance. And I thought, oh my God, don't do this again. Thankfully, they had an empty netter in the last minute to finally ease my stress. But whew, that was a fun night last night. Very, very busy night as well. We've got another couple quick headlines we'll get to here before we have to get to a break. This one from Major League Baseball. It is very funny. Royals fans, we have found something for you to celebrate. The downfall of another man. Madison Bumgarner. He has been designated for assignment by the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are going to eat $34 million for him to never have to play for them ever again. He signed a 5-year, $85 million deal with the Diamondbacks before the 2020 season. And in 69 starts with the D-backs, he posted a 5.23 ERA. His ERA for this season begins with a 10 before you get to the decimal point. Yikes.
And he remained through it all a miserable and possibly racist grump who was last seen on the mound yesterday against the Cardinals, yelling at Wilson Contreras. Weird how it's always the brown guys he's yelling at for having the temerity to say something to himself after swinging at a pitch. So good riddance. R.I.P. Bozo. I hope I never see him again.
I'm sure Royals fans, you've got some thoughts about Joe Buck right now as well. But
the only thing going up higher than Bumgarner's ERA, which by the way is over 10, is the Madison Bumgarner pack. Sky high.
Former Royal great Anthony Miskowitz, by the way, has been recalled by the D-backs. He will join the team for their series against the Padres starting today. Yeah, Madison Bumgarner, deeply unlikable guy. Does not take away from the fact that in 2014, that was probably the best postseason single pitcher performance ever.
Oh, yeah, all time pantheon. His name will always resonate in baseball history for that and that alone.
And yet still, R.I.P. Bozo. Any other headlines for you?
No. One more quick one from the college basketball transfer portal. Mays High standout former Iowa State guard Caleb Grill has found a new home. He's going to resume his college career at Mizzou. Grill, of course, was weirdly kicked off the team at Iowa State. There was an oblique reference made by him that he said something he couldn't take back, and he was removed from the Cyclones team a week and a half before the Big 12 tournament. But he's found a new home, and that is Mizzou. So Caleb Grill will be suiting up for the Tigers next year.
I have some thoughts about that player and that school and their pairing together. I will save them for when Missouri comes to Allen Fieldhouse in December.
If I speak, I will get in
If
trouble.
I speak, I will get in trouble. They say, and you always learn as a kid, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So for now, we will just end our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Let's take a timeout. When we come back on the other side of this break, speaking of college basketball, Dan got to listen to the first couple episodes of the new 30 for 30 podcast series, The Bag Game, about college basketball corruption, and the return of Billy Preston. We'll talk about it next on 580 Sports Talk. I've said it many times that probably for my entire life, the most incomprehensible, unforgettable, yet entirely forgotten sports event, like it's a myth that it happened, was the showdown for relief at the T-Mobile Center, then Sprint Center in Kansas City during the summer of 2017, going into the 17-18 season, when KU and Mizzou, who are now, they now play each other again. They've got this 6-year series going on.
And maybe that doesn't happen without the showdown for relief.
It's certainly possible. There was, if you don't remember, this horrible string of hurricanes that had just battered the American Southeast and the Gulf that summer. And KU and Mizzou got together. There were a couple of these around the country, and they played each other in a pay-per-view, online stream only, I believe, game, an exhibition game, and that KU team went to the Final Four, and that Missouri team was the most hyped Mizzou team since 2012 because they had the number one recruit in the country in Michael Porter Jr., or number two behind Marvin Bagley, didn't matter. And they played, and we got Billy Preston for KU, who never played in a regular season game, against Michael Porter Jr. for Mizzou, who played in like 6 games the entire year. And that was the high-profile matchup. It was Preston versus Porter, and they became like complete figments of our imagination after that.
Right.
It is the most unbelievable sporting event in my entire life.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those. It's like, did that really happen?
It doesn't feel like it did. Like, it's hard to imagine that game actually took place. So why are we bringing up Billy Preston? Well, ESPN's 30 for 30, which we all know the movies at this point. They are, a 99% hit rate. They're so good. They also have a podcast series, and they do, mini series in this podcast series. They do a great job. There's tons and tons of those I haven't listened to, but what I have listened to, I know my wife really enjoys them too. They're phenomenal. Really well done. Great journalism, all of that. Very entertaining. Well, their newest series, 4-part series, it's called The Bag Game, and it is all about the investigation, the ongoing NCAA investigation into college basketball eligibility and corruption and shoe companies and all that. We all know the story very intimately well. Well, Billy Preston plays a major role in this new 30 for 30 podcast series and about his eligibility and why he never played at KU and his involvement and his family's involvement in all of this. Now, it is also potentially notable, Dan, that it is expected that sometime this summer, possibly sooner rather than later, we are finally going to hear what the final decision is on KU's infractions case.
Yes, the IARP and Kansas finally had their IARP hearing this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the timing of this podcast release is coincidental. Maybe it's not. But we have waited a very, very long time for the IARP to do what is its last bit of business as a going concern, because it will cease to exist after it rules on Kansas and rules on LSU. It's already ruled on Louisville, I believe. It's already ruled on Arizona,
NC State, I think.
NC State,
Memphis.
and Memphis.
KU's last.
KU and LSU are still left. Yeah. And both schools apparently have had recently their hearings, including KU this past weekend, which would line up with the reason there were no portal or recruiting visits with regards to KU basketball this past weekend.
Yep. The fact that Harrison Ingram moved his transfer visit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it all lines up understandably conveniently. So
I listened to the first 2 parts. It's a 4-part podcast series from 30 for 30 podcast. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts. It's about probably 3 hours in total, maybe a little less. And I listened to the first 2 parts of it today, which are the bulk of Billy Preston's story. Fun fact, he and Marcus Garrett were trying to buy shoes in Kansas City, and they were running late to get to practice, and that's why Billy Preston got the car wreck that he got in. As he was trying to get to practice and wrecked the Dodge Charger that his mother had bought for him, and Curtis Townsend called a tow truck, and you have to report if there's been like an incident with one of your athletes, an injury with one of your athletes, to the NCAA. So KU did that. But then it was somebody else who said, hey, you should maybe look into why Billy Preston's driving that Dodge Charger around. And I had forgotten about the turn of phrase from the press release, because as everybody remembers, Billy Preston didn't play in the season opener that year against Tennessee Tech because he missed a class. And he was set to make his KU debut at the Champions Classic. They played Kentucky that night. They beat Kentucky that night. And it was that night that KU essentially pulled Preston. Like, they pulled him that day. They told him that day he wasn't going to play. And the turn of phrase from the press release was they needed a clearer financial picture. Of
blast from the past.
A clearer financial picture of the vehicle. So they never got one. Bill Self continued to insist that, it'll be soon. We'll know something on Billy soon, sooner rather than later. There's a bunch of clips in the podcast of him saying that from press conferences. That's kind of amusing after a while. And then after about 17 games where it became exceedingly clear that nobody was moving fast for a resolution for this kid, he went to Bosnia to play professional basketball.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah. So he left and he went to Bosnia to play. So his mother is interviewed, and Nicole Player is her name, and she's interviewed throughout the podcast as well, and says that TJ Gasnola, the Adidas guy who said he gave the Preston family $89,000, she said she only got about half that, but remembers getting an envelope with $30,000 in it. Gasnola testified, of course, that he did not tell anybody with the KU coaching staff about the payment. And of course, that begat the court ruling, which ruled that Kansas was a victim.
That is correct.
Victim of fraud.
The courts have said it. I will be taking no further questions.
It may surprise you that Preston and his mother dispute the definition of KU as a victim. And one thing that Nicole Player says in the podcast is, if anybody was a victim, it was us, essentially. We left the school and weathered the storm, and never one time did I come out and say we're victims. When the reality is, if anybody is a victim here, we're victims of a corrupt system. We're a victim of college corruption that has gone on for decades before us and will continue to go on decades after us. And I think she's right. I do think Billy Preston is a victim here.
I agree. Oh, 100% agree.
Billy Preston is absolutely a victim here. His basketball future changed the minute he lost control of that Dodge Charger. It went from him being one of the most in-demand high school talents and probably a guy who, in a best case, I mean, that was a pretty darn good KU team who went to the Final Four, but like he would have made him better. He would have probably started, and I don't know if they're beating Villanova in the Final Four, but like he was a ceiling raiser for that team.
Well, you want to know the domino effect of that? If KU has a big man the caliber of Billy Preston, you know who they don't have that year in the second half?
They don't try and get Silvio De Sousa to reclassify
and join midseason.
And join the team that year midseason. Of course, Silvio De Sousa's story is its own thing, separate to what we're talking about here with Billy Preston. So I do think that he is a victim, but I don't think he is a victim of, it's not a victim of college corruption, as his mother put it. It's just, he is a victim of the NCAA bureaucracy failing to adjust over the course of time to the reality that their athletes were valuable and that their athletes should have had the opportunity to pursue opportunities to cash in on that value. And if the NIL environment existed when Billy Preston was a freshman at KU, none of this happens.
Nope.
None of this happens. We're not having this conversation because you can argue, I think fairly, that the relationship between the shoe companies and certain colleges certainly has helped those colleges get hot upper echelon talent. That has certainly been the case.
Right.
But if Billy Preston had had the opportunity to pay for that Dodge Charger through a endorsement deal with a dealership in Lawrence or his hometown in California, then nobody cares when he wrecks it.
No, it means nothing.
It means nothing, and he plays against Kentucky. And maybe he doesn't get injured the way he did when he was playing overseas. Maybe there is still, that bright basketball future for Billy Preston that was undeniably altered when he lost the opportunity to play college basketball for, frankly, pretty stupid reasons.
Yeah, that's true. That's completely true. It's been a crappy system for the talent, for the labor forever. And look, I'm not trying to get into the, some of the things we've relitigated year after year after year ever since 2017. But the fact of the matter is, none of this stuff ever had to happen. And it reminds me very much of Bud Selig's steroid hunts in the early part of the 2000s. Like, you allowed this to happen. Your people allowed this to happen. And now that you're viewed in a negative way, you're trying to go after some people. You're trying to say, well, these are the bad guys, even though I fostered that environment. It's the same with the NCAA here. People like Billy Preston get caught in the crossfire and get chewed up and spit out because of the environment that you, as the NCAA, have helped harbor for decades and decades, really your entire existence. You're entirely right. Like, if Billy Preston could have gotten a Dodge Charger from anyone in Lawrence or Kansas City that year, with the kind of profile he had,
they would have been happy to give it to him.
Yes.
Because he felt like the missing piece, right? They'd gone to the Elite Eight the last 2 years. They felt like they were a player of Preston's caliber away. He was supposed to be for that team what Josh Jackson was for the 2017 team.
It's true.
And yes, anybody would have been happy to allow him to be financially comfortable or drive a nice car, whatever it was that he wanted in exchange for his basketball talents. Because again, I try and stress this because I understand there is still a school of thought that loves capitalism until we start talking about college athletes, and then we get real socialist with it for reasons I'm barely able to comprehend. But 18 to 22-year-old college kids of all different shapes and sizes can market whatever their skill is and make money plying a trade if they have a special and unique talent as a musician, as a writer, as a chemist. If you have a talent, you are able to pursue making money with your talent unless you happen to be a great basketball or football player, and then it is only the university gets to profit off of that, and they don't have to pay you a thing. So the NIL, I mean, it still doesn't solve the main problem, which is there's too much money for the bureaucrats. There's too much money for the presidents, the chancellors, the ADs, the coaches, and there's so much money that universities do things like Clemson is spending $28 million on a brand new gymnastics facility. Gymnastics!
Yeah.
$28 million!
Yep.
So there's money to pay these kids and to do right by them because they are generating revenue for these universities. And the NCAA and the universities mostly have passed the buck to their boosters, to the NIL collectives, and say, well, we're still not allowed to do anything about this. You guys take care of it now. And if the NIL collective, the Mass Street Collective, I think is what it's called in Lawrence, if that had existed in 2018, Billy Preston would have been living right. His mother would have been taken care of.
We've all heard reports about what Grady Dick made last year.
Yeah.
That number is not all that hidden.
And the thing is, it doesn't really seem to bother anybody.
No.
It's eyebrow raising because it's never been in plain English in front of all of us before, but nobody's really bothered by it. And you know who else isn't bothered by it? Anybody's teammates. That was always one of the most ridiculous arguments. Man, if you paid college athletes, it would just fracture the locker room. You had to pay the quarterback, but the third string punter, you have to give him the same. Otherwise, it'd be a bad locker room. No, guys are thrilled when your teammate gets a bag. That's true in the pros. It's true in college too. And how many of those kids have gone out and done good things for their teammates, for their communities with the NIL bag?
Also, that's just work. Like, you have a bigger job than me, so you get more money.
The market says you're more valuable than me. It doesn't seem to bother anybody in the Chiefs locker room that Patrick Mahomes makes more than James Winchester.
Yeah, can you imagine if Juju, when he hit free agency, was like, I got to leave because I'm not making Mahomes money? Well, then you are a moron. Like, of course you're not. But he's the most important player in the whole league. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I feel bad for Billy Preston. I really do. I know I've been making jokes, but I really do feel bad for him.
I do too.
His life was changed by this.
Yes, and he was a victim, and they do. College athletics, all athletics at all levels are exploitative to a certain extent. Like you are being exploited, you are being used for your talents once you no longer are of use to that organization or that university or that youth sports program, or they find somebody who is of more use to them than you, they kind of cast you out. That's unfortunately the way high-level sports works. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that's what it is. And that happened, unfortunately, to Billy Preston in a really unfortunate way. When he couldn't play at Kansas, he had to go make some money. He had to go play basketball.
Yeah.
And that led him to Bosnia, and that led him to, kind of being an afterthought after that. He did win a G League championship, though.
Hey, that's something.
Not nothing.
We do have to get to a quick timeout. We're back after this on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk. All right, Dan, your favorite pick for one of the games going on tonight?
I think the Kings are going to beat the Draymond-less Warriors tonight.
Ooh,
They are
spicy.
6-point dogs. They are plus 210 on the money line. I'd definitely take them plus 6, and boy, that money line looks awfully attractive to me.
My favorite bet of the day, I took Yankees first 5 against the Angels. That has already gone final. Well, that number anyway, and I won that one. Give me the New Jersey Devils tonight. They get one back against the Rangers in the NHL playoffs. We've got to get to one more break. The final word is next on 580 Sports Talk. Wrapping up 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word on this Thursday afternoon, Dan.
One more note of condolence to the great sports fans of the city of Oakland. They've already lost the Raiders. The Warriors moved across the bay, and now it appears inevitable that they will also lose the A's. That is a major, major bummer. That great sports town deserves better. Even if I wish my favorite baseball team would move away to the moon sometimes.
Oh, my gosh. Final word for me, Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to stick with the same belief I've had for a handful of weeks now. You've got 3 big needs at the top of the draft. I don't really care which order you get them in. Take care of them with your first 3 picks. It's already a major win for your draft as we head into the 23-24 season. The draft is just 1 week away from today. More NFL draft tomorrow, just the 2 of us, and with Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com as well for our Chiefs Insider. We'll look ahead to the Royals weekend against Shohei Ohtani and the Los Angeles Angels, and so much more coming up tomorrow right here on 580 Sports Talk. Don't forget, if you missed any of the show, head to our website, 580wibw.com. Go to the podcasts tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk for the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. Or you can head to YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW, and you can go check our back catalog of all of our show live streams. We'll join you tomorrow from 3 until 6 heading into the weekend. For Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Thanks for listening to 580 Sports Talk.